I sitting on the cold, damp floor of some sketchy dungeon tavern, hungover out of my mind, trying to figure out how my life went so spectacularly wrong. Let me back up. My name's Ivan, 26 years old, proud owner of a now-dead bar called Haven in a tiny northern Chinese county town. I picked that name because it sounded poetic and deep. Turns out, poetry doesn't pay rent. See, I did everything right. Got my craft beer recipe from an old master in Qingdao. Learned cocktail making for 3 years in Beijing. Handpicked every single decoration from flea markets. My bar looked amazing. One small problem, nobody came. All the young people left this town years ago, chasing dreams in big cities. What's left? Old folks, kids, and government workers. Not exactly the craft cocktail crowd. And to make it worse, 3 chain bars moved in with their corporate money, doing buy one get one deals like they were giving away candy. My little independent bar got crushed like a bug under a corporate boot. May 20th, 2026, the most romantic day of the year. Couples everywhere, roses, chocolate, disgusting love songs blasting from every speaker. And me? I officially went bankrupt. On Love Day, the universe has a sick sense of humor. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I cracked open a bottle of spiritus. That's 96 proof Polish vodka, the stuff you're supposed to use 1 drop of in cocktails, and started drinking it like water. 3 glasses in, my brain turned to soup. Then my phone buzzed. Some weird text about Otherworld Tavern recruitment, with a sketchy link that looked like a Nigerian prince wrote it. I called it a scam. Out loud. Used some colorful language. Then my drunk fingers clicked it anyway. Filled out the application form with my own name, while calling it a scam. Because drunk logic is undefeated. I figured, what's the worst that could happen? My bank account had 500 yuan. I'm an orphan, no family, no car, no property. What are they going to steal my hangover? I passed out on the bar counter. Woke up here. And by here, I mean a dungeon tavern with glowing blue moss on the ceiling, stone walls dripping with moisture, and a bar counter that looks worse than a butcher's chopping block at the county market. Oh, and somebody uploaded a whole Wikipedia article directly into my brain. No permission asked. Just, ding, new memories installed. Apparently this place is called the Dark Dungeon, and this tavern is basically an employee wellness program for monsters. Like a break room. For creatures that want to murder things for a living. And I, the one person out of dozens of otherworld applicants who actually ran a bar, got hired. Lucky me. There's a contract on the counter. Written on old parchment with glowing golden letters. Very dramatic. The highlights. I run this tavern forever. Keep monster customer satisfaction above 60%. Collect brewing recipes. And if I fail for 3 months straight, I get thrown into something called the reincarnation pool. Turned into a random low-level monster for 10 years. Then dumped back on Earth. A random, low-level monster. I looked at my hands. 10 fingers. 2 palms. Warm, human hands. I tried to imagine them as skeleton claws. Or slime tentacles. Or goblin paws. Imagination failed. Brain refused to cooperate. Then, I remembered something that made my chest actually hurt. Not metaphorically. Real, physical chest pain. Before I went bankrupt, I sold my BMW. $15,000. Sitting in my bank account. In another universe. Money I was going to use to start a noodle shop or a pancake stand or literally anything that wasn't this. I did 3 deep breaths. The air tasted like moss spores and wet rock. Very different from the barbecue smoke and dry air back home. 0 stars, would not recommend. But you know what? After going bankrupt, nothing really scares you anymore. You develop this, well, I'm already here, attitude. Like showing up to a party you didn't want to attend, might as well grab a drink. I tried talking to my new boss, the dungeon core, or whatever it is, and got absolutely nothing back. Just dust falling from the ceiling and a signed contract I apparently scribbled my name on while blackout drunk. My signature looked like a toddler wrote it. The last stroke even had a little upward flick, like drunk me thought the whole thing was hilarious. So here's my situation. I've got 30 days to turn this dump, with its spiderweb-covered empty shelves, worm-eaten wood, and 0 inventory, into a functioning bar for dungeon monsters. 30 days. No supplies. No staff. No experience serving undead customers. I straightened up behind the counter and introduced myself to nobody in particular. Ivan. Male. 26. Bankrupt bar owner. 150,000 yuan trapped in another dimension. Currently a probationary dungeon tavern operator. Then I heard it. Click, clack, click, clack, like bones tapping on stone, getting closer. I took a deep breath. Customers here. The door swung open. And honestly, after everything, a skeleton walking into my bar wasn't even the weirdest thing that happened to me today. That honor still goes to drunk me clicking a scam link and somehow ending up employed in another dimension. Lesson learned. Never click links when you're drunk, especially when you still have money in your bank account. My first customer walked in and I almost stabbed him. Look, in my defense, I'd just woken up in a monster dungeon 5 minutes ago. When a mysterious figure in a black robe pushes open your door, you grab the rustiest sword you can find and you hold on tight. My sword couldn't cut butter, but holding it made me feel approximately 2% braver. This guy glided in like he owned the place. Slow, dramatic, robes dragging on the floor like a gothic wedding dress. He had a staff with a spinning purple gem on top that looked like someone trapped a tiny galaxy inside a marble. Very cool. Very terrifying. Then my brains knew. Monster Encyclopedia feature kicked in. A translucent info panel popped up in front of my eyes like the world's most unsolicited pop-up ad. Name, Archmage Saul. Level, health, skills. Everything was question marks. Fantastic. Super helpful. But at the bottom, in the most casual font possible, it said, relax, I've got your back. Nothing in the entire dungeon or forest will attack you. The dungeon core, so my psycho employer does offer benefits. Good to know the health plan covers. Not being eaten. I put the sword down and tried to look like a professional bartender instead of a man who was just mentally writing his own obituary. Saul's voice was surprisingly pleasant, deep, calm, the kind of voice you'd expect from a professor sipping tea in a leather armchair, not from a faceless creature in a horror cloak. He called me little guy. I'm 26. But sure, compared to an immortal wizard, I'm basically a toddler. So you're the new tavern owner? He asked. I told him yes and offered to check the wine cellar for drinks. Smooth, right? Very professional. He laughed. Actually laughed. His shoulders shook and everything. I'm the one who had this place renovated, he said. The cellar has nothing but empty barrels. Fair point. I'd been caught bluffing by a wizard. Not my finest moment. He pulled out a piece of glowing paper from inside his robe, with a scaly hand, by the way, covered in tiny dark scales, dropped it on the counter, and told me it was a brewing recipe, so I'd have something to serve tomorrow. Then he mentioned he'd send his magical servant to pick up a drink tomorrow night as payment for the recipe. Then he tapped his staff on the floor, a swirling blue portal appeared behind him. I caught a glimpse of a massive black tower on the other side, and he just left. The whole visit lasted maybe 5 minutes. This ancient archmage had the energy of a delivery driver during lunch rush. Drop the package, say 2 words, vanish. I looked at the recipe. My encyclopedia auto-translated it into Chinese, which was nice of it. Black rye ale. Ingredients. 100 grams of black rye from dungeon floor 2, 20 grams of glowing moss from floor 1, 15 grams of red berries from floor 2, 100 liters of water. Mash it all up, throw it in a barrel, wait 8 hours. Sells for 1 imperial gold coin per glass. Simple enough. But first I needed to check what I was actually working with. I did a full tour of my establishment. It was depressing. The main hall had 1 counter made of rocks and a plank, 1 wine shelf covered entirely in spiderwebs, and 1 chair with a broken leg propped up by a rock. That's it. That's the whole restaurant. I've seen abandoned bus stops with more furniture. Behind the counter, a door led to stairs going up and down. Upstairs was my bedroom, and I have to say, whoever designed it was creepy accurate. It was an exact copy of my apartment back on Earth. Same bed, same gray-striped sheets, same 2 pillows because I like hugging one when I sleep. Even the chipped paint on the desk corner was identical. The dungeon core basically stalked my living situation and 3D printed it underground. Thoughtful. Yes. Unsettling. Also yes. The good news. My room exists in some kind of pocket dimension. Almost nobody can get in. I'm basically invincible in my bedroom. Finally, a superpower I can relate to. I sat on the bed for about 10 seconds before jumping up. Can't rest. 30-day clock is ticking. Downstairs was the cellar, twice the size of the main hall, 8 massive brewing barrels lined up perfectly, and in the corner, a plastic water faucet. A white, modern, completely out-of-place plastic faucet. Next to it, a handwritten sticky note in wobbly Chinese. Water from Dungeon Floor 50. Tastes sweet. No pollution. Safe to drink. Logistics department. There's a logistics department. In the dungeon. Someone in this hellhole has a desk job. I tried the water. Ice cold, slightly sweet, with a hint of minerals. Better than anything that ever came out of my apartment tap. 5 stars. Armed with my useless sword and a wicker basket, I headed out to gather ingredients. The corridor outside was 6 meters tall, 4 meters wide, covered in glowing blue moss. At the end, a spiral staircase with a magic stone tablet. Tap it, pick a floor, and it carries you there like the world's spookiest escalator. I picked floor 2 and rode the glowing stair down. Stepped out into a massive room with a ceiling 15 meters high, stone pillars wrapped in dead vines, and the aftermath of a battle everywhere. Smashed gargoyle pieces, broken arrows, scorch marks. Smelled like someone had a barbecue and a fist fight at the same time. But the adventurers had already moved deeper, so I had the place to myself. Found the black rye growing in an untouched patch of dirt. Imagine regular wheat, but black, thick-stemmed, waxy, with a metallic sheen. Each stalk had exactly 1 grain the size of a peanut, hard as a pebble. Smelled faintly of grain and minerals. This wheat had more iron than my diet. The red berries grew on dark green bushes, pinky nail-sized, blood red, with stems so tough I had to pinch them off with my fingernails. After a few dozen, my thumb was killing me. 2 hours of harvesting later, I had enough for all 8 barrels. Grabbed the glowing moss on my way back. That stuff grows everywhere in the corridors, soft and squishy like soaked mushroom, basically the dungeon equivalent of a weed. Back in the cellar, I got to work. Crushed everything according to the recipe. The rye was hard as rocks. The berry pits fought back, but the moss turned to glowing blue mush in seconds. Mixed together, it made a dark purple layer of luminescent crumble at the bottom of each barrel. Poured in the water. It hissed on contact. The mush started dissolving, turned brown, foam bubbled up, and the whole cellar filled with a smell like toasted malt. Actually pretty nice. 8 barrels filled, sealed, fermenting. My back was drenched in sweat. My arms felt like noodles, and my fingers were stained with rye dust and moss juice that took forever to scrub off. 8 hours to ferment. By morning, I'd have my first batch of dungeon beer ready to serve. Day 1 in the monster bar business. No customers eaten, no limbs lost, 1 recipe acquired, 8 barrels brewing. Not bad for a bankrupt guy who got here by clicking a scam link. So I'm standing in the middle of my tavern, and I use that word very generously, staring at a room that has exactly 1 chair. 1. And it's broken, propped up with a rock like a college student's IKEA furniture. No tables, no stools, nothing. My grand plan to serve monster cocktails was currently bottlenecked by the fact that every single customer would have to drink standing up like they're at a subway station hot dog cart. I did what any reasonable employee would do. I yelled at my boss, "Hey, Dungeon Core, you want me to run a bar with no seating? Do you know what a bar with no chairs is called? A window. I have professional standards here. My reputation in the otherworld tavern industry is at stake." Dead silence. Dust falling from the ceiling. Classic middle management energy. Then, after what felt like forever, a sleepy voice drifted into my brain. Slow, lazy, sounding exactly like a supervisor who got woken up from a nap by a complaint email. "Oh, my bad. I'll send someone." That's it. For words. Then radio silence. No follow-up, no timeline, no apology for giving me an empty room and calling it a business. I waited. Cleaned the counter. Mopped dust with a cracked measuring cup. Found a moldy rag, scrubbed off the mold, folded it neatly. I was so bored I was doing chores voluntarily, a new personal low. Then the floor started shaking. Heavy footsteps, dragging sounds, grunting, something enormous approaching. A massive tree trunk, 1 meter thick, smashed through my front door. Not opened it, not knocked. Launched it across the room like a wooden frisbee. The door frame exploded. Hinges gone, wood splinters everywhere. Are you kidding me? I thought you said I was safe. Someone's battering ramming my bar on day 1. The sleepy voice came back, slightly more awake this time, still unbothered. Relax. That's your construction crew. They're here to build furniture. Tell them what you need. Also, this one's free. Next time you pay, gone again. Didn't even let me ask about pricing or who's paying for my door. Then the crew walked in, and I genuinely thought I was hallucinating. Goblins. Dark blue-green skin, built like miniature bodybuilders, wearing bright yellow hard hats with dark dungeon goblin construction, spray painted on the side in sloppy red letters. The last character had a paint drip running down it. Tool belts loaded with chisels, saws, hammers, and planes, all worn smooth from years of use. These guys were legit professionals. Terrifying, tiny, goblin professionals. They carried in tree trunks like they weighed nothing, stacked lumber in perfect formation, and waited quietly for orders. More organized than any contractor I ever hired back on Earth. Their foreman, Grizz, was the tallest one, still only chest height on me, with an orange reflective stripe on his helmet, a brass name badge, and 3 copper rings in each pointy ear that jingled when he walked. He handed me a leather catalog that looked like it survived a war, but inside had beautifully detailed furniture blueprints. 3-view diagrams, load-bearing specs, acid resistance ratings for slime customers, even carbon content of the iron fittings. These goblins were more professional than my contractor cousin who once installed a shower backwards. The catalog had everything. Bar stools rated for 300 kilos, acid-proof tables, fire-resistant stone benches, built-in booth seats for customers with no legs. Amazing range. All premium stuff cost money though. The only free option was basic furniture, plus replacing my murdered front door, which I was absolutely claiming. I closed the catalog, crouched down, and drew a floor plan in the dust with my finger. Bar stools up front, long tables along the walls, heavy-duty reinforced tables in the corners for the big guys. All right, Grizz, let me show you where everything goes. Those goblins worked like they were being paid overtime, which they weren't, because this whole gig was free. Within minutes, they turned raw logs into perfectly sized furniture. Sawing, planing, chiseling, with chips flying everywhere like a sawmill exploded. And the precision? Every cut was dead accurate. These guys would put every furniture assembly line on Earth out of business. They built 3 sizes of everything. Giant tables for the big monsters. Sitting in one of those made me feel like a 5-year-old at Thanksgiving dinner, legs dangling in the air. Tiny tables for the short creatures. I tried sitting at one, and my knees hit my chin. And normal-sized ones for beings roughly my height, which I tested extensively by sitting down and pretending to drink imaginary beer from multiple angles. Quality control is important. The new front door was beautiful. Smooth black wood, proper iron hinges, silent as a ghost when you push it. Grizz personally lubricated the hinges with slime-produced oil from a little clay jar. Yes, slime lubricant is a thing here. I've stopped questioning stuff. I made them install a door bolt too. Took me forever to explain the concept. A horizontal stick that slides into the wall, but Grizz got it, and now my door locks from inside. Will it stop anything that could actually kill me? Absolutely not. But sleeping behind a locked door hits different psychologically. I named the place Monster Tavern because it's a tavern for monsters. Sometimes the best branding is just being honest. Here's the part that got me. When Grizz asked about the beer, his vertical goblin pupils literally lit up. The dungeon core had pre-installed what drinking feels like directly into every monster's brain as marketing. They'd never tasted alcohol, but their memories already told them it was amazing. Grizz was drooling over beer he'd never actually tried. That's the most aggressive advertising campaign I've ever seen. Inception-level product placement. He promised to bring his whole crew tomorrow. His boys were already elbowing each other and grinning, ears twitching with excitement. One guy fumbling his tools because he couldn't stop staring at my cellar door. Then they cleaned up everything. Sawdust, scraps, splinters, the murdered old door. Packed it all up and carried it away. Cleaner than any contractor I've ever hired. Back on Earth, renovation crews leave behind enough trash to fill a dumpster and then ghost your calls about it. Turns out these aren't just any goblins. They're dragon blood goblins from floor 45. Grizz is literally the floor boss down there. Floor 45. Most adventurer teams brag about reaching floor 20. These carpenters in hard hats moonlight as elite dungeon guardians. They only came because the dungeon core gave them special permission, and they needed to hurry back before adventurers noticed the boss was missing from his arena. My renovation crew was a squad of in-game raid bosses doing construction work on the side. This dungeon is wild. After they left, everything finally hit me. The adrenaline tank was empty. I'd been running on pure, might as well, energy since I arrived. Contracts, wizards, recipes, harvesting, brewing, directing furniture placement, and now my body was cashing the check my stubbornness had written. I dragged myself upstairs, kicked off my shoes, collapsed face first into bed fully clothed, and my last conscious thought was, at least the mattress is the same firmness as my old one. Out cold. Dreamless sleep. Woke up to an alarm clock sound that had absolutely no business existing in a fantasy dungeon. I got woken up by an alarm clock that went off inside my brain. No phone, no speaker, just an explosion of noise directly in my skull. I jumped out of bed screaming about being late for work before remembering I don't have a job anymore. Well, I do. It's just in hell. The dungeon core, my sleepy, barely conscious boss, informed me that the wall clock is new, meals are provided for the first month, and after that I'm on my own for food. Basically a 1-month employee cafeteria plan. Corporate benefits in a fantasy dungeon. What a time to be alive. Then I found dinner on the counter and nearly cried. Seaworm rice bowl, tomato, egg stir-fry, pork rib soup, a shiny apple, and a little sign that said, free refills, eat until full. Back on Earth, I was eating instant noodles twice a day until my gums bled. Now a dungeon is feeding me better than I ever fed myself. I ate so slowly it was basically meditation. Then I read that, free refills, sign again and got seconds, because you never betray your own stomach. 8 o'clock, doors open. The dungeon core sent a mental notification to every monster in the building. Not a text, not a pop-up. More like a GPS beacon lighting up inside their brains pointing toward my bar. Low-level monsters who'd never tasted anything except blood and dust started shuffling my way. The high-level ones ignored it completely. Apparently, they'd had elf wine and dwarf ale before and weren't impressed by a startup tavern with 1 drink on the menu. Fair enough. Every new bar has its snobs. One problem, though. My beer was stuck in the cellar. 8 barrels, 100+ kilos each, and my arms are built for shaking cocktails, not powerlifting. I pushed a barrel. Nothing. Tried tilting it. Might as well have tried moving a building. I was standing there doing mental engineering, levers, pulleys, a very long ramp, when my first real customer walked in. A 3-meter-tall cyclops holding a stone axe bigger than my torso, sent by archmage Saul to pick up his drink. I filled the cyclops' leather flask from the barrel tap and discovered something horrifying. This beer looks like crude oil. Not dark beer. Not stout. Literal petroleum. It poured out in slow, sticky strings, pulling apart like melted cheese. The sound it made going into the flask wasn't a splash. It was a thick, gloopy, honey-in-a-jar sound. But the smell, oh man, the smell was unreal. 3 layers, roasted malt first, warm and toasty like walking into a bakery in winter. Then red berry sweetness floating on top, like jam on fresh bread. Then this cool, mineral bitterness from the moss creeping up underneath, clearing your head like a mint you didn't ask for. I've smelled hundreds of spirits as a bartender. Peaty whiskey, juniper gin, sugarcane rum. And nothing in my entire career made me close my eyes and sniff 3 times in a row. Smells incredible. Looks like something you drain from an engine block. The recipe said I could drink it. My eyes said absolutely not. I have standards. The thing I'm pouring needs to at least look like a beverage. This looked like it belonged in a pipeline. The Cyclops stared at the cellar like a kid outside a candy store, but left without ordering. Saul told him to come straight back. I yelled after him that he could come back for a drink after his delivery. Watching his body language shift from sad to excited was like flipping a light switch. Even Cyclopes have feelings. Then I waited. Alone. Behind the counter. Tapping my fingers. Brain spiraling. Is the price too high? Can monsters even afford 1 gold coin? Did nobody get the notification? Should I make a sign with an arrow? Then the door swung open and Grizz marched in with his whole squad. Gone were the hard hats and tool belts. Tonight they were in full battle gear, dinted black iron armor, blood-splattered everything, fresh claw marks across Grizz's chest plate, 1 goblin missing a chunk of ear, another still actively bleeding through bandages. These guys came straight from work, and their work is fighting adventurers to the death on floor 45. But their faces? Pure joy. 14 pairs of glowing yellow eyes lit up like Christmas lights. They weren't tired soldiers. They were office workers who just got off a brutal shift and wanted their first beer. And the most beautiful sight of all, Grizz slammed a fat bag of gold coins on my counter. The jingling sound it made was better than any cash register on earth. "Boss, is the beer ready?" "It is, but I need a small favor first." "Say no more, boss. Which adventurer team do you want us to assassinate?" He started banging his bloody armor like a war drum while his boys stared at me with murder-ready eyes, just waiting for a target. "I love my regulars already." No, no, no. I don't need anyone assassinated. I just need help carrying beer barrels upstairs." Cold sweat was running down my face. I asked these goblins for a small favor, and they immediately offered to go murder an adventurer squad for me. Their eyes were glowing with bloodlust like I was about to give them a Christmas bonus. Note to self: be very specific with requests around dragon blood goblins. Grizz waved it off like I'd asked him to pass the salt, pointed at 8 of his guys, and they marched into the cellar. Each one came back carrying a 100-kilo barrel on their shoulder like it was a grocery bag. Meanwhile, I couldn't even tilt one. My masculinity took a quiet beating that day. While his boys hauled barrels, Grizz told me about his shift. Apparently, someone leaked that floor 45 drops dragon breath weapons, so adventurers had been swarming his nest non-stop since yesterday. He'd just wiped out a gold-ranked team called Blazing Lions, the dungeon equivalent of an elite special forces unit, and described it like swatting flies. He casually pointed at a blood-soaked shield with a roaring lion emblem that one of his boys was carrying as a souvenir. Then I poured Grizz his first glass and watched a hardened warrior chug a liter of oil-looking beer in one breath, black liquid dripping down his chin, pulling sticky strings like melted mozzarella. He slammed the cup down and yelled for another round. His boys grabbed their drinks and scattered, some at big tables, some in corners, 2 just squatting by the counter drinking on the floor. Goblin bar etiquette, I guess. Second cup, Grizz slowed down and actually tasted it. I asked for his honest review. "Terrible. Worst beer I've ever had." My face froze. This beer smelled better than anything on earth, and he called it garbage. Too thick, too bitter, no finish, moss aftertaste stuck to his tongue. Compared to some ancient dragon blood wine he used to drink thousands of years ago, my beer was underground while that one was in the sky. Then he shrugged. "But we're in a dungeon, not an elf forest. Having anything to drink beats water by 10,000 times. Fair. I'm basically running a gas station beer cooler in the middle of nowhere, and my customer's alternative is literally nothing." Grizz also gave me free business consulting while drinking his 3rd liter. My tavern needs better decor, food, and upgraded drinks if I want the boss-level monsters to visit. Right now, it's just a stone cave with new furniture. He basically told me my bar has the atmosphere of a parking garage. Harsh, but accurate. I told him my plan: build reputation with the low-level crowd first, save money, then upgrade everything step by step. He raised his glass in approval. A blood-covered goblin warlord just validated my business strategy. MBA could never. Then I got curious about how this world works and asked Grizz to explain the ranking system. His price? More beer. I poured him cup number 3 without hesitating. Best trade deal in history. Monster and adventurer ranks go: low, normal, high, elite, lord, legend, demigod, mythic. Levels run from 0 to 999. 2 systems stacked together. Rank is what you're born as, level is what you grind to. Grizz showed me his stats panel. Lord rank. Level 899. 540,000 health points. I probably have less than 10. This guy was casually drinking in my bar with enough HP to survive a nuclear strike. The kicker? Monsters are basically stuck at whatever rank they're born with. Grizz has fought for thousands of years, killed countless adventurers, ground his way to 899, and he's still Lord rank. Adventurers only need level 100 to rank up. Monsters need a miracle. The career mobility in this dungeon is absolutely criminal. Someone should unionize. He put away 5 full liters without even getting flushed. Not a single slur, not one wobbly step, just an occasional black beer string hanging from his lip. My entire college drinking career felt inadequate. Last thing I learned: adventurers respawn too, but they drop gear and experience when they die. Lose enough and they can actually derank. Monsters in the dungeon respawn for free. Monsters outside in the forest? Dead is dead. I'm not going to feel sorry for the adventurers, though. This world has its rules. I don't know any adventurers personally, and this dungeon tavern is my entire livelihood now. If it ever comes down to picking sides, I'm Team Dungeon without a second thought. My bar, my monsters, my oil-textured beer. We ride together. My first real walk-in customer was a gray gremlin the size of a toddler, and it almost ran away the second it saw Grizz sitting there in blood-soaked armor. The poor thing squeezed through the door like it was sneaking into a lion's den, took one look at 14 dragon blood goblins covered in battle scars, and immediately tried to bolt. I had to physically call it back. On opening night, every customer counts, even the ones who are 90 centimeters tall and shaking like a leaf. Grizz helped out by moving his axe aside and basically saying, "Relax, kid. Fighting in the bar has worse consequences than getting killed by adventurers." His boys smiled too, which honestly made things scarier because goblin smiles are just rows of needle teeth, but the intention was nice. This little gremlin had 1 gold coin, its entire life savings, clutched so tight the metal was shiny from palm sweat. It stood at the counter and couldn't even reach the top, just 2 pointy ears poking above the bar like a cartoon. Had to climb a stepping stool to order. It took its drink to the darkest, most hidden corner table, and the way it drank broke something in me. Tiny sips, holding each mouthful forever. When a black string of beer dripped from its lip, it licked it back up instantly, couldn't waste a single drop. This creature had been killed and resurrected who knows how many times, never tasted anything but blood and dust its whole existence. And now it was savoring the worst beer in this world like it was liquid gold. Reminded me of my old regulars back on Earth finding their favorite drink. Some things are universal across dimensions apparently. Grizz's crew settled up, 65 cups total, I charged 60. Opening day discount. The gold coins had blood on them. Didn't ask whose. Money is money. Grizz dropped some valuable intel before leaving. His nest is over 100 more goblins waiting for their turn to visit. He wants food on the menu next time, and he won't come back personally until I get better drinks. Basically gave me a 1-star Yelp review with constructive feedback. His boys cleaned up their own table before leaving, even wiped it down. These battle-hardened killers have better bar manners than most humans I serve back home. After they left, I discovered my bar has a management system. A fancy leather book appeared on a new desk that definitely wasn't there yesterday. The dungeon core installed it while I slept, which is becoming a pattern I'm choosing not to think about too hard. 6 sections inside: ratings, operations, drink recipes, monster encyclopedia, quests, and tavern upgrades. Opened the first page and a holographic blue screen popped out like a sci-fi tablet. This broken-down little tavern apparently needs more administrative systems than my bankrupt bar on Earth ever had. Day 1 revenue: 61 gold coins, 1 deeply moved gremlin still nursing half a cup in the corner, and a management interface I didn't ask for. We're in business, so my bar has a Yelp system. An actual, magical Yelp system built into a glowing leather book. Because apparently even in a fantasy dungeon, customer reviews are inescapable. Opening night scorecard: 23 customers, 95% approval rating. 18 perfect reviews, 3 good, 2 average, 0 complaints. On Earth my bar died with 0 reviews. Here I'm killing it on day 1 with a beer that looks like motor oil. Life is weird. The reviews themselves were gold. One goblin wrote, "So this is what alcohol tastes like. Boss talked about it for centuries, finally tried it." Another said, "Used to just squat in a corner staring at walls after getting resurrected. Now I can grab a drink. Worth dying a few extra times. These monsters have been fighting and dying on repeat for thousands of years with 0 entertainment, and I just handed them their first hobby. I'm basically the guy who invented weekends." Grizz left an average review because he wants food. Thousands of years of combat experience, and his feedback is basically, needs appetizers. Saul the Archmage also gave average, something nostalgic about how the beer reminded him of his youth he can never return to. Even magical demigods get sentimental after a drink. The operations dashboard showed 60 gold coins earned. Not bad for night 1 with 1 product and 0 marketing budget. My recipe book currently has exactly 1 entry: black rye ale, rated white quality, which is the second lowest tier on a scale that goes up to red. I'm selling the dungeon equivalent of gas station beer and getting 5-star reviews because my customers have literally never tasted anything before. This business model is bulletproof until someone develops standards. The monster encyclopedia was the real surprise. Every customer I serve unlocks their entry and earns me soul fire, a currency I can use to strengthen myself. Low-level monsters give 1 point. Mythic level ones give 100. Serving Grizz's crew plus Sol netted me 227 soul fire points just sitting there pouring drinks. I'm leveling up by being a bartender. Every RPG hero is out there slaying dragons, and I'm gaining power through customer service. Then there's the tavern upgrade menu. My establishment is officially classified as a broken tavern, level 0. The system description literally roasted me. Drafty everywhere, barely any drinks. Only attracts bottom-tier customers. Decoration is an eyesore, zero taste in design. Shocking that anyone actually comes here to drink. My own bar management system is cyberbullying me. Upgrades cost gold and perfect reviews. A small kitchen, 100 gold coins. A brewing room, 300. Expanding the hall, 300. Everything costs money I don't have yet. The 30-day survival exam needs 5 returning customers, 500 gold coins, and 30% approval rating. Already got 60 coins and 95% approval, so honestly the exam looks manageable, unless I get cocky and jinx it. I was about to crack open those soul fire points and power myself up when the door swung open again. Someone I absolutely did not expect walked in. My next customer was a skeleton. Just bones. No skin, no muscles, no nothing. Just a walking anatomy model with green fire in its eye sockets and a mining pickaxe. The dungeon core didn't even give it clothes. Not even pants. Budget cuts hit different in the underworld. Skeleton miner Solon walked up, slapped a gold coin on the counter, and ordered a beer. I stared at his jawbone and asked the question we were both thinking. Buddy, can you actually drink? Haven't tried in centuries. Let's find out. Spoiler, he could not. Poured a full liter of black oil beer into his mouth and watched it waterfall straight through his ribcage onto the floor. Not a single drop stayed inside. Just a sad skeleton standing in a puddle of wasted beer. The silence that followed was devastating. His soul fire dimmed. He sighed, which, how does a skeleton sigh? And mumbled about needing some dwarf-made gadget called a soul atomizer that turns drinks into ghost-compatible mist. I immediately smelled a side quest and started pumping him for details. He told me there's a dwarf craftsman mining on floor 30 who might build one, and to bring booze because dwarves are hopeless alcoholics. Classic fantasy racism from a skeleton. Love it. He refused his refund and asked me to keep the gold coin as store credit because adventurers would just steal it from his mining cave anyway. Saddest loyalty program enrollment I've ever processed. Then things got ugly. Remember that cute little gremlin nursing its beer in the corner? The one I felt sorry for? The one spending its life savings on a single drink? Yeah, it tried to murder me. While I was distracted thinking about dwarf negotiations, this 90-centimeter psychopath pulled its rusty knife and lunged at my back. Full killing intent, aiming for my heart. One taste of beer turned it from a shy little creature into a crackhead willing to commit homicide for 8 barrels of dungeon moonshine. The dungeon core's pre-installed. Beer is amazing. Memory hack backfired spectacularly on this one. It created an addict on the first sip. I heard the scream, turned around, saw the knife coming, and my brain had exactly enough time to think 2 thoughts. Is this thing insane? Followed immediately by, I'm dead. Then a hand the size of a dinner plate grabbed the gremlin's entire head from behind. The Cyclops, Ogrelin, Saul's delivery guy, had come back for his own drink and walked in at exactly the right moment. One squeeze, and the gremlin exploded into black smoke, got sucked into some invisible vortex, and vanished. Sent straight back to the reincarnation pool with a permanent ban from my bar. Its rusty knife clattered to the floor. That was it. Customer service issue resolved. I collapsed on the ground shaking like a phone on vibrate. Nearly got assassinated by a gremlin over cheap beer. On Earth my bar failed because nobody came. Here my bar almost killed me because someone liked it too much. Ogrelin acted like nothing happened, put 10 gold coins on the counter, and asked for a refill. I refused his money. Free drinks for life for the guy who stopped me from getting shanked. He refused my refusal because Cyclopes are rich and always pay. We argued about the bill like 2 grandmas fighting over a restaurant check. After he left, I picked up the gremlin's knife from the floor and shoved it in a drawer as a reminder. Safe zone or not, never turn your back on a desperate customer. Then I poured myself a taste of my own beer. One tiny sip. Nearly coughed up a lung. Absolutely disgusting. Tastes like bitter tar filtered through a dirty sock. Grizz was right. Worst beer ever made. I need better recipes immediately, not just for the dwarf mission, but because a bartender who can't drink his own product is a professional embarrassment. Upgrading my combat stats just became priority number one. Because apparently in this business, happy hour can turn into attempted murder hour real fast. So I pulled out all 229 soul fire points and finally got my own character stats. Turns out I'm officially the weakest creature in the entire dungeon. 5 attack power, 0 magic, an evasion rate of 0.0001%, meaning I could dodge roughly 1 attack per million. The system's official review of me was, and I quote, "a trash-tier mortal. My own employee handbook is roasting me." But here's the beautiful twist. I have a passive ability called Invincible Body that makes every monster in the dungeon and forest unable to hurt me. So that gremlin attack earlier apparently wouldn't have killed me anyway. The Cyclops saving me was just bonus heroics. I'm simultaneously the weakest and most unkillable thing down here. I'm a cockroach with a business license. 50 soul fire per stat point gave me 4 points to spend. Dumped 1 into stamina and 3 into spirit because, and I cannot stress this enough, I want to be a wizard bartender. Stamina bump worked instantly. I could actually nudge a barrel now instead of being defeated by inanimate objects. Spirit though? Nothing. Closed my eyes, focused super hard, waved my hands around like an idiot. 0 magic detected. My mana stayed at flat 0. Apparently, I installed the wiring but forgot to flip the breaker. Added that to tomorrow's shopping list. Ask Ancient Wizard how electricity works. 3 o'clock bell rang inside my skull announcing closing time. Trial run over. Real business starts tomorrow. 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., 6 hours nightly. Lighter schedule than my Earth bar, where I worked noon to 4 a.m. like a zombie. Even the dungeon has better labor laws than the Chinese restaurant industry. Outside my door, the Dungeon Core's logistics department had hung a little wooden sign. Flip one side for open, flip the other for closed. When it says closed, nothing in existence can enter. Better than any lock, any door bolt, any security system ever invented. My previous door bolt was emotional support hardware. This sign is an actual force field. Day 1 final count. 62 gold coins, 20 plus monster encyclopedia entries, a quest in progress, 1 attempted stabbing survived, for stat points invested, and a 95% customer satisfaction rating at a bar serving the worst beer in the known universe. Then I found my midnight snack waiting on the counter. Lamb skewers, grilled chicken wings, garlic oysters, roasted mushrooms, and an ice-cold can of actual human beer, sweating with condensation. The Dungeon Core's catering department out here making Michelin-quality late-night drunk food while I serve my customers liquid petroleum. Cracked the beer, took 1 sip, and nearly wept. This is beer. Cold, crisp, refreshing, everything my black rye oil isn't. I suddenly remembered that my bar is literally called Monster Tavern, and the drinks are designed for monsters, not humans. I've been judging monster beer by human standards, which is like a fish criticizing a bicycle. Crushed 3 lamb skewers in a row, mentally promoted the logistics department to employee of the century, and crawled into bed. One day in the dungeon beat an entire year of running my bankrupt bar on Earth. Fell asleep planning tomorrow's wizard visit, dwarf negotiations, and my slow transformation from world's weakest bartender into world's weakest bartender who can also do magic. Baby steps. Woke up, reached for my curtains out of habit, pulled them open, and found a stone wall. Because I live in a dungeon now, the Dungeon Core replicated my apartment so perfectly it included curtains over a wall where no window exists. Whoever designed my room has commitment issues with realism. Breakfast was incredible though. Golden millet porridge, fried dough sticks, steamed buns, pickled radish. The dungeon feeds me better than I ever fed myself. I'm gaining weight in captivity like a zoo animal. Headed to Saul's Wizard Tower via the teleport stairs. The place was ridiculous. Pure black stone polished to a mirror finish. Tower disappearing into the clouds. Front door covered in glowing runes. And standing guard at the entrance? My Cyclops buddy Ogrelin, completely hammered, swaying back and forth like a tree in a hurricane. He drank my oil beer last night and still hadn't sobered up. A 4-meter giant with an axe, drunk on duty. Saul sent him to bed like a disappointed dad dealing with a teenager who raided the liquor cabinet. Inside the tower was basically a billionaire wizard's penthouse. 8-meter ceilings with a moving star map, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and Saul sitting behind a desk covered in miniature spinning planets and crystal bottles. Without his hood on, he looked like a distinguished middle-aged noble with dark scales and purple cat eyes. Much less terrifying, honestly. More, university professor who's secretly a dragon, vibes. Got down to business. Wanted 2 things, new recipes and magic lessons. Bad news on recipes. Saul explained my equipment is trashed here, so even if I bought a fancy recipe, I couldn't brew it properly. Like buying a race car engine for a bicycle. He showed me 2 green quality recipes at 200 gold each. I have 62. Math doesn't check out. The magic conversation was more productive, but equally humbling. Told Saul I pumped 3 points in his spirit power and couldn't feel any magic whatsoever. His response: I had the cause and effect backwards. Spirit power is the container, magic is the water. I build a bigger cup, but there's nothing in it. Need a high-level mage to plant a magic seed inside me first. Natural awakening takes months of meditation, and I'm a bartender, not a monk. Lucky for me, there's a half-god wizard sitting right across the desk. I asked him to do it. He said yes, but not for free. His price: go to floor 60, dodge a legendary rank shadow monster, and bring back 10 shadow crystals from a mine down there. Floor 60, where legendary creatures live. Me, with 5 attack power and the combat skills of a wet napkin. But my invincibility passive means nothing in the dungeon can actually hurt me. Worst case scenario, I spend an afternoon being chased around a cave by an angry shadow beast while stuffing purple rocks into my pockets. Embarrassing? Yes. Fatal? No. In return, I get magic powers and half price on the maple fruit wine recipe. Signed that contract faster than I signed my drunk teleportation scam link. Left the tower with a clear to-do list. Find a dwarf on floor 30 about the ghost beer atomizer. Raid floor 60 for wizard crystals. Save up for new recipes. 2 days ago, I was a bankrupt bartender. Now I'm running errands across dimensions for an ancient lizard wizard in exchange for supernatural abilities. Career pivot of the century. Floor 30 was a nightmare maze of abandoned mining tunnels stretching in every direction like spaghetti dropped on a map. No neat rooms with doors like floor 2, just endless branching passages, low ceilings that forced me to duck, and supposedly poisonous gas traps hiding everywhere. Finding one short dwarf in this mess felt like searching for a specific ant in a football stadium. I picked the downward tunnel because miners dig deep, obviously, and ran into my first local. A 4-meter rock golem made entirely of granite with glowing red pebbles for eyes. Nearly had a heart attack when I turned around and found it standing 1 meter behind me, staring like a curious boulder. Its encyclopedia entry basically said, "Very strong, very stupid," which turned out to be accurate. It spoke like a computer from the 90s, long pauses between every word, simple sentences, possible system crashes mid-thought. The big guy wanted to know if my bar served drinks for rock creatures. I told him not yet, but someday. He was disappointed, but took it well, then decided to follow me as a bodyguard in case adventurers attacked me. Sweetest pile of rocks I've ever met. Unfortunately, his walking speed was roughly 1 step per geological era, so I lost him within minutes. After an hour of jogging downhill through identical-looking tunnels, completely questioning whether the rock golem's directions were reliable or just random words strung together by a creature with the IQ of gravel, I finally heard it. Metal hitting stone. Rhythmic. Professional. Beautiful. Squeezed through a crack barely wide enough for my shoulders and found a small cave absolutely glittering with silver-white iron ore. And there in the middle, shirtless, arms thick as tree stumps, red beard caked with rock dust, the dwarf, Balin Copperhammer, under 160 tall, but radiating more authority than anyone I'd met in 2 worlds. He spotted me and immediately asked the most reasonable question possible. How was a defenseless human still alive on floor 30? I almost blurted out everything before realizing I had no idea whose side this guy was on. If he was working with adventurers and I told him about my monster bar, that could blow my whole operation. My sleepy boss chimed in at the perfect moment. Dwarves have a treaty with the dungeon, safe to talk. First time the dungeon core's timing was actually helpful instead of just lazy and cryptic. I laid it all out. Monster tavern, skeleton customers who can't drink because liquid falls through their ribcage, need a soul atomizer. Balin looked at me like I was the strangest creature he'd encountered in centuries of mining underground. Then he asked if I knew the rules for requesting dwarf craftsmanship. Pulled out my little pouch of black oil beer. He sniffed it, raised an eyebrow, took a swig, got mineral dust in his beard, and delivered the most backhanded compliment I've received yet. Tastes terrible, but the effort counts. Sit down and let's talk. My entire negotiation strategy, bring alcohol to an alcoholic, was working exactly as planned. Thank you, Skeleton Solon, for the insider tip. Balin the dwarf turned out to be the easiest negotiation of my life. I handed him terrible beer. He said, tastes awful but I respect the hustle, and agreed to build the atomizer for free. Just bring materials. Compare that to Saul charging hundreds of gold for a piece of paper with a recipe on it. Dwarves are the real ones. The shopping list had 4 items scattered across the dungeon like the world's worst scavenger hunt. Hollow vines from floor 45, 80 kilos of copper or from floor 20, bomb mushroom caps from the dark forest, and swamp tree sap from floor 10. I decided to hit floor 45 first because my buddy Grizz lives there, and having a warlord friend makes errands significantly less stressful. Teleported in and literally landed on Grizz's patrol route. He rolled up on a dire wolf like a fantasy biker gang leader, armor freshly polished, looking like he'd just stepped out of a military recruitment poster for goblins. His riding wolf was bigger than any earth wolf, dark gray fur, red eyes, casually sitting there like an oversized murder dog. I explained the whole skeleton can't drink situation, and he immediately volunteered to help collect the vines. Good thing too, because these vines were absolute psychopaths. Soaked in ancient dragon blood, they whip anything that gets close hard enough to snap bones. Grizz walked up to them like they were mildly annoying houseplants, grabbed them barehanded, chopped them at the root with his axe, didn't even flinch when they smacked his armor. 2 minutes, all 9 vines harvested. I could have been there for hours getting beaten up by angry plants. Floor 45 itself was incredible. A massive underground wilderness littered with dragon skeletons, so huge their rib cages formed archways. Trees grew between the bones, and mysterious light made everything bright as daytime. Grizz's kingdom was basically a fantasy nature documentary set. I mentioned Saul's green quality recipes and casually dropped that I'm working toward recreating the legendary dragon blood wine. Grizz's ears literally twitched. He said if I pull that off, his entire nest of hundreds of goblins would stampede my bar so hard they'd destroy the doorframe. Best marketing feedback I've ever received. 1 material down, 3 to go. 80 kilos of copper or next. My back was already complaining, and I hadn't even started the heavy lifting yet. Grabbed a rusty pickaxe and a 2-meter-tall basket from the junk pile, stuffed 2 hamburgers and a cold Coke into the side pocket. Dungeon logistics department really knows my soul, and teleported to floor 20. Landed smack in the middle of an ambush. Not a monster ambush. A human ambush. 6 adventurers hiding in bushes wearing homemade ghillie suits, waiting to jump unsuspecting monsters, and I materialized right in their kill zone like a lost tourist at a military exercise. Their mage girl scanned my stats and showed everyone my pathetic character sheet. 110 health. 5 attack power. 0 magic. The system's description of me literally said, an ordinary person who stumbled into the dungeon through absurd luck. These people had spent years fighting their way. Down to floor 20, and here I was, a guy with a rusty pickaxe and a backpack full of sandwiches, casually strolling through like I owned the place. They had a collective mental breakdown. The archer started questioning his entire career path. The shield guy said he'd trained for 8 years, and I'd already gone deeper than him without scratching my skin. One of them genuinely suggested he should have become a miner instead of an adventurer. I accidentally destroyed 6 people's self-esteem just by existing. Their bald captain, Hawk, was the only one keeping it together. He accepted the impossibility of my existence, warned me about poisonous scorpions in the mine pit, handed me a signal flare in case I got surrounded, and offered to escort me out at nightfall. These strangers were genuinely trying to protect me. A helpless civilian they'd known for 5 minutes. Real ones. When I asked if they were worried I might be a monster in disguise, the mage girl deadpanned. Monsters wouldn't disguise themselves as something this weak. Couldn't even argue. She was technically right. Floor 20 had a fake sun, by the way. An actual warm, bright sun hanging inside a dungeon. My boss casually mentioned it's just a projection of the outside sun, like that's a normal sentence. This place makes less sense every day. The mine pit was 40 meters deep, advertised as an abandoned mine mountain, but it was clearly just a giant hole. Either the name was false advertising or adventurers had literally mined an entire mountain into a crater. Both options were equally ridiculous. Spent an hour crawling through gaps between slag heaps, chipping out copper or one fist-sized chunk at a time. Ran into a scorpion the size of a dinner plate with a half-meter venomous tail. We made eye contact. It wiggled its stinger at me, either threatening me or saying hello, hard to tell with scorpions, then crawled away. The encyclopedia confirmed it would normally kill me instantly, but wouldn't because I'm the bar guy. Being a bartender is the ultimate survival skill in this world. Then I hit the jackpot. A buried mine tunnel entrance with an entire wall of red copper ore, 2 meters tall, more than everything I'd collected combined. Spat on my hands, swung the pickaxe, and got to work. Sparks flying, chunks falling, backpack filling up. Not bad for a bankrupt bartender who couldn't lift a beer barrel 2 days ago. Mined so much copper, I overfilled my basket. 80 kilos was the goal, but I got carried away swinging that pickaxe like a man possessed. Hauled the whole thing back to the tavern and dropped it on the floor so hard the doorframe shook. My back will be filing a formal complaint. 3 materials down, 1 to go. Next stop, floor 10, the devouring swamp, to sweet-talk a living tree into giving me its sap. The swamp was exactly as awful as it sounds. Black-green water covered in algae, fog that smelled like rotting salad, random bubbles of poison gas burping up from the mud, and zero ambient noise. Not even bugs wanted to live here. I had to hopscotch across soggy grass clumps and slippery fallen logs like the world's worst obstacle course. Every step was a gamble between staying dry and becoming swamp soup. 20 minutes of ankle-twisting navigation later, I found regular dead trees oozing amber sap. Not what I needed. My monster encyclopedia stayed quiet. 40 minutes in, I finally spotted the one. A tree trunk so thick 2 people couldn't hug around it, and it was breathing. Slow, rhythmic rising and falling. Its roots occasionally twitched in the mud, sending dark ripples across the water. Then it opened its eyes. Dozens of them. Amber slits hidden in bark crevices, all focusing on me simultaneously like the creepiest security camera system ever designed. The encyclopedia said it used to be a war tree protecting elves before the Dungeon Corps recruited it and stuck it in this sewage pond forever. Career downgrade of the millennium. These trees are all connected underground, one massive root network. When I spoke, I wasn't talking to one tree. I was addressing the entire swamp. Cool. No pressure. I tried diplomacy first. Explained who I am, what I need, promised I'd only take a tiny amount. Got zero response. So I switched to plan B, poured some black rye beer on its roots. The tree sucked it up instantly. A little root tip poked out of the mud near my feet, sniffing toward my beer pouch like a puppy begging for treats. Deep in the swamp, something made a sound like a satisfied sigh made of creaking wood. I told the tree, sap first, then more beer. Fair trade. It cracked open its biggest bark crevice and fresh amber sap came pouring out like a honey fountain. Didn't even have to cut anything. The tree served it to me on a platter. Filled my entire flask while it oozed down the trunk into a convenient little puddle at the base. Poured the rest of my beer on its roots as promised. The little root tip waved goodbye and slipped back into the mud. The swamp groaned one last long, lazy farewell. Weirdly wholesome interaction with a nightmare tree in a poison swamp. Swung by floor 2 on the way home to restock brewing ingredients. Black rye, red berries, glowing moss. 30-minute shopping trip. Done. Back at the tavern by 3:30 p.m. with 3 out of 4 materials checked off. Last item. Bomb mushrooms from the dark forest. 4.5 hours until opening. Grabbed my sword, grabbed my basket, and teleported to the spookiest part of the woods. A place literally called the Howling Ghost Forest. Because of course that's where mushrooms grow. The swamp tree was the easy part. The dark forest was where things got spooky. Teleported to a place called the Howling Ghost Forest, which looked exactly like every evil forest from every movie ever made. Twisted black trees with blood-red sap, claw-shaped branches reaching down from above, and wind moaning through the gaps like the world's worst background music. 0 points for originality, full points for atmosphere. Important discovery about forest travel. Unlike the dungeon, where I can teleport home from anywhere, out here I can only teleport within 5 meters of the stone marker. I tested this like a scientist. 4 meters, still connected. 5 meters, signal weak. 6 meters, nothing. One step too far, and I'm stuck in Murder Forest with no ride home. Noted. Memorized. Tattooed on my brain. Needed bomb mushrooms that grow in dark, wet places. Took the downhill path into a valley so gloomy, even the trees looked depressed. Ground got squishier with every step, air got thicker, and everything smelled like wet compost. Found regular mushrooms first. Thin, papery, useless. Then at the bottom of the valley, tucked under a giant rotting log, I found them. These mushrooms were the size of human heads, perfectly spherical, hard as bowling balls. I knocked on one, and it went thunk like I was knocking on a door. More stone than fungus. Took me 3 tries to figure out the trick. Each stem has a little bump where it connects to the ground. Wedge your blade there, and it snaps right off. 9 mushroom boulders harvested in 15 minutes, packed neatly in my basket. The weird thing? Didn't see a single monster in the entire forest. Not one. Like they all collectively decided to take a day off. Suspicious, but not my problem. Made it back to the tavern and laid everything out. 9 mushroom helmets on the counter. Bundle of dragon blood vines by the wall. 80 kilos of copper ore in the corner. Flask of tree sap on top. For locations, one very long day, every checkbox green. Pressed balance signal button, felt a tiny magic pulse go out, and sat down to wait. From 9 a.m. to late afternoon, I'd bounced across 6 different locations. Negotiated with a breathing swamp. Got mistaken for a lucky hobo by adventurers, and collected enough weird ingredients to build a device that turns beer into ghost-compatible mist. Somewhere on Earth, my empty bankrupt bar is collecting dust, and I'm out here living a life that makes 0 sense, but somehow works. Now I just need my dwarf to show up before happy hour. Balin showed up at my bar looking like he'd been rolling in a gravel pit. Sweat, mineral dust, red beard full of rock chips, headlamp still blazing. This man teleported straight from his mining hole, without even turning off his flashlight. Dedication to the craft. I brought him downstairs to the brewing room where I'd stacked all the materials, and what happened next was the most impressive thing I've witnessed in 2 worlds. Balin reached into a belt pouch the size of a wallet and started pulling out a full blacksmith workshop. Forging hammer bigger than his head. Precision hammer. Iron anvil. 6 different pliers. A working furnace that lit itself when he flicked it. This tiny leather bag was basically a clown car for metalworking equipment. I need to find out where they sell those pouches. Then he went to work, and I realized I'd been standing next to a genuine artist this whole time. No measurements. No blueprints. No rulers. Everything was in his head. Pipe diameters, joint angles, inscription spacing. All done by eye with machine-level precision. He heated the dragon blood vines until they turned red, bent them into perfect U-shapes freehand, fitted the mushroom helmets with copper rings that locked together like they were manufactured in a factory, sealed. Every joint with the amber tree sap, and carved magical inscriptions using a needle-thin chisel at speeds that made my eyes hurt. The finished product looked like something from a steampunk diving catalog. 3 machines, each a dark red copper box with 3 tubes coming out, each tube ending in a mushroom cap helmet. Pour beer into the top. Press a button on the remote control. Magic inscriptions atomize the liquid into mist. Mist travels through the tubes into the helmet. Skeleton puts on helmet. Skeleton finally drinks beer. Engineering genius. Balin handed me 3 copper remote controls, labeled A, B, and C in dwarf-carved letters, with buttons numbered 1 through 3 for each helmet. 9 helmets total, 3 machines, 1 button per drink serving. He specifically warned me not to spam the buttons because each helmet only processes 1 cup at a time. Basic instructions, but I appreciated him assuming I was dumb enough to need them. He was right. 28 minutes. 3 complete atomizers from raw materials. He promised 30 and finished early. Then he sat down at my bar, ordered a beer, and complained that the sample I'd given him that morning woke up his addiction. I poured him a free one, and he immediately offered me a permanent 20% discount on future projects. Best customer-contractor relationship I've ever had. While Balin drank, I loaded all 3 machines, 50 liters each, burned through 2 entire brewing barrels, just filling them up. Ran downstairs, mixed fresh batches to replace the empty ones. Came back up, lined up the 3 remote controls on the counter, flipped my door sign to open, and sat down behind the bar 5 minutes before showtime. Skeleton Happy Hour was officially about to begin. Opening night hit different. The dungeon bell rang at 8 sharp, and this time it reached every floor, every cave, every nest. Yesterday was a soft launch. Tonight was the real deal. 5 minutes after doors opened, 30 dragon blood goblins marched in like a military platoon. Boots clanking, armor dented, fresh wounds still bleeding. 8 more than yesterday. Grizz must have told them, behave yourselves or else, because they lined up at my counter in an orderly queue, which for goblins is basically a miracle of civilization. 60 cups, 60 gold coins, 5 minutes. My cash drawer filled up faster than my entire first night combined. The bar exploded with noise, goblins bragging about kills, arguing about patrol schedules, comparing battle scars. Yesterday felt like a quiet test run. Tonight felt like a real bar. Balin the dwarf retreated to the farthest corner stool to escape the racket, but I caught him smiling into his beer. Then Solon the skeleton walked in, saw the 3 gleaming atomizers, and lost his mind. Didn't even try one, just shoved his gold coin at me and sprinted out the door to fetch his friends. Skeleton Man saw the promised land and immediately went to gather the congregation. Couldn't even get him to taste test first. While Solon was recruiting, the zoo arrived. 3 cowardly low-level goblins who froze at the door when they saw the dragon bloods. 2 slimy fish people who left wet footprints everywhere. The encyclopedia helpfully assured me they don't poop in my drinking water, which is exactly the kind of reassurance that makes you more worried. 3 slimes that swallowed their beer cups whole and turned from poop green to oil black. And a mud golem named Ash Gray who politely informed me mud creatures can't drink liquids because it leaks out of their bodies. Added mud-compatible beverages to my growing to-do list. The encyclopedia descriptions kept getting wilder. The slime entry casually suggested I could gut one and turn it into a pillow. My own employee handbook is recommending I harvest my customers for home furnishings. Then Solon returned with 8 skeleton miners rattling behind him like the world's spookiest conga line, all clutching gold coins so tight their finger bones were leaving dents in the metal. They'd been told about the atomizers, but clearly didn't believe it until they saw them. A brand new tavern having legendary dwarf-crafted equipment within 24 hours of a customer mentioning it? Impossible. Except there they were, 3 beautiful copper machines gleaming on the table. I put the first helmet on Solon. Pressed the button. 3 seconds of mechanical humming. Then beer mist filled the helmet. Solon went quiet. His soul fire, that flickering green candle in his empty eye sockets, trembled once, very gently, like something fragile being touched for the first time in centuries. Better than the last ale I drank when I was alive. 8 jaws dropped open behind him. The youngest skeleton was already waving 2 gold coins over his skull, screaming for a double. I suited them all up, pressed buttons in sequence. 8 helmets filled with mist simultaneously. 8 pairs of soul fire flared bright green. Skeletons drinking beer through magic mushroom helmets connected to copper machines by dragon blood vine tubes sealed with sentient tree sap. If someone told me this would be my career 2 days ago, I'd have checked them into a hospital. By 11 p.m. my bar was packed. Goblins arguing at the big table, slimes absorbing drinks at the small table, skeletons huddled on the floor around the atomizers planning tomorrow's group trip, fish people dripping everywhere. The little goblins were crouched in the corner, nursing cups bigger than their heads. My cash drawer was getting heavy. My customer list was growing. My monster variety was expanding. And somewhere in a mining cave, a skeleton was already counting heads and coins to bring the rest of his crew tomorrow. The gold was flowing. The bar was alive. And closing time was still hours away. Closing time, 2 a.m. Bar empty except for Balin face down on a table, 7 beers deep, mumbling that my terrible beer has stronger kick than the fancy stuff from his dwarf kingdom. I threw a clean rag over his mess and let him sleep it off. The man built me 3 magic machines in half an hour. He earned his hangover. Tonight's numbers were ridiculous. 104 customers, 184 gold coins, 216 soul fire points. Started the day with 62 coins, now sitting on 246. Half the money I need for the first tavern upgrade. Earned in 2 nights of selling the worst beer in the known universe to creatures who've never had anything better. My business model is monopoly on entertainment in a war zone, and it's printing money. Only problem, I almost died from exhaustion, not monsters. One bartender serving 100 customers with no help, pouring drinks, collecting money, operating atomizers, bussing tables, mopping floors. My shoulders feel like someone beat them with hammers. I need to hire staff desperately, but every monster in this dungeon already has a day job getting killed by adventurers. Gonna ask Saul about recruitment options. Dumped all my soul fire into stats before bed, 2 points stamina, 2 points spirit. Still chasing that wizard dream. Felt the warmth spread through my body, exhaustion melting away like someone plugged me into a charger. Set my alarm for noon because tomorrow I'm raiding floor 60 for shadow crystals. Woke up, grabbed the curtain, found the stone wall again. Third time. Still not used to living underground. Balin had left a note on his table. Nice bar. I'll be back. Balin Copperhammer. Shortest 5-star review I've ever received. Lunch was incredible. Xinjiang pilaf with lamb skewers the size of my thumb and egg drop soup. Ate like a king, grabbed my pickaxe, and teleported to floor 60. Floor 60 was a whole different vibe. No moss lighting, no torches, nothing. Just a cracked ceiling leaking eerie purple light onto ancient ruins. Crumbling temples, broken pillars, stone floors carved with faded inscriptions. And growing out of the pillar cracks, the shadow crystals Saul wanted. Purple, glowing, arm-length spikes of pure magical mineral. Also present, a legendary rank shadow creature lurking in the darkness. Formless black fog with 2 narrow purple slit eyes floating in it. Watching me like a cat watches a mouse it hasn't decided to eat yet. The encyclopedia said it's made of condensed shadow magic, nearly immune to physical damage, and very territorial about those crystals. I announced my intentions, 10 crystals, in and out, nothing personal. The shadow thing just stared, blinked once. I chose to interpret that as, fine, whatever, mine 10 crystals as quickly and quietly as possible. Each one popped off the pillar in 2 hits. Easy work. Showed them to the shadow creature like a polite thief presenting evidence before leaving, packed them up, and speed-walked to the exit. My palms were drenched in sweat the entire time. Not because I was scared. Absolutely not. It was the mining. Very physically demanding work, mining. The fact that a legendary creature made of living darkness was silently hovering 20 steps away had nothing to do with it. Previous monsters were scary in ways you could see, muscles, armor, axes. This thing was scary in ways you couldn't. You just knew it was watching, couldn't tell when it started, and really didn't want to find out what happens if it stops being patient. Didn't go back to the tavern. Went straight to Saul's tower. 10 purple crystals in my bag. A magic awakening waiting on the other end, and dreams of throwing fireballs dancing in my head like sugar plums. Ogrelin was sober this time. Standing guard like a proper soldier, spine straight, stone club ready. Gave me the full security scan treatment, pressing his giant eyeball right up to my face like a living metal detector. Took him about 30 seconds to either recognize me or give up trying. Either way, he let me through. Upstairs in Saul's penthouse, some mystery customer in a black robe was finishing a deal, bandaged hands. Bought some dusty, sword-looking thing. Got teleported out without a word. Watching someone get teleported from the outside was way more dramatic than being inside one. The air literally crumpled like tinfoil and snapped back. Magic is wild. Saul was in a great mood from the sale, so when I dumped 10 perfect shadow crystals on his desk, he practically glowed. Turns out these crystals are extinct on the surface. Every kingdom's magic market is bone dry. Only source is floor 60, guarded by a legendary shadow monster that's beaten his servants 6 times. I just waltzed in and chipped them off a pillar because nothing underground can touch me. My uselessness in combat is paradoxically my greatest asset. Then came the main event, becoming a wizard. Saul pulled out an ancient purple spellbook, a thumb-sized crystal bottle containing swirling purple mist with a single glowing thread inside it, some silver powder, a glowing pen, and a blank scroll. The man was setting up for surgery, and I was the patient. He explained the deal. This seed would bind to my soul permanently. coloring all my future magic with shadow energy. Could I learn other elements? Sure, but shadow would always be my foundation. Like how my first beer on Earth was cheap lager, and now everything tastes slightly like that. Didn't hesitate. Told him to do it. Closed my eyes. Saul started chanting in a language my translation system couldn't touch. First time anything in this world went untranslated. His hand hovered behind my skull, radiating heat that drilled through bone into brain, slid down my spine, and parked itself behind my heart. The crystal bottle cracked open. The purple mist rushed into my body like it had been waiting its whole existence for this moment. Settled in my chest, synced with my heartbeat, then split. Thousands of hair-thin roots spreading through every blood vessel, every joint, every fingertip. Cool like mint water flowing through my veins, leaving tiny warm spots at every junction. Underneath my normal heartbeat, a second rhythm appeared. Tiny, quiet, a seed beating in sync with my heart like a backup drummer who just joined the band. Saul told me to reach for it with my mind. 5 points of spirit power finally earned their keep. I could actually sense a tiny purple star pulsing deep in the darkness behind my eyelids. Touched it with my consciousness, and magic exploded through my body in a complete circuit. Heart to shoulder to fingertip and back. Everything tingled. Opened my eyes. Faint purple light flickering on my fingertips for half a breath before vanishing. Barely visible. Absolutely magnificent. Saul looked tired, the good kind, like a surgeon after a successful operation. Told me to run 1 magic circulation before bed every night to slowly build power. Once I can push magic outside my body consistently, I get to learn my first shadow spell. 2 days ago, I was a bankrupt bartender who got scammed into another dimension. Now I'm a shadow mage. Worst shadow mage in history with the magical output of a broken flashlight, but still, a mage. The wizard bartender arc has officially begun. My stats panel finally had magic on it. 10 whole points of shadow magic. I went from trash tier mortal to trash tier mortal who glows purple sometimes. Career growth. Best part? My wizard level is tied to my tavern level. I don't grind monsters, I grind customer satisfaction. Every bar upgrade makes me stronger. I'm literally powering up through hospitality. Somewhere, every RPG hero who ever killed 10,000 rats for experience points is crying. Saul warned me never to tell anyone how my leveling works. Everyone has secrets, especially people watched by powerful beings. Solid advice from a 1,000-year-old lizard wizard. Then he immediately switched to salesman mode. So, buying anything today? I brought up my staffing crisis. 100 customers last night, 1 bartender, 0 help. Every dungeon monster already works for the dungeon core. Can't exactly poach employees from the guy who owns the building. Saul asked me a weird question. How do you feel about beast folk? I said I'd never met one. He conjured a magic mirror and showed me a teenage girl with golden hair, fluffy red fox ears, and a big bushy tail. Not the green muscle beast I was expecting. Fox girl slipped out of my mouth before my brain could stop it. Saul pretended not to hear. Then casually mentioned that the Holy Empire's top officials publicly call beast folk heretics, while privately keeping beast folk dancers. Politicians are the same in every dimension. Long story short, this fox girl named Lil is hiding in a human city called Riverside, dodging Imperial capture. She's connected to Saul somehow, but he can't enter human cities for mysterious reasons. He needs me to go extract her, bring her back, and she becomes my employee. I agreed, but negotiated payment first. Saul expected me to ask for epic magical artifacts. I asked for the maple fruit wine recipe. He stared at me for a solid 10 seconds with a, that's IT, expression. A demigod wizard prepared to hemorrhage treasure, and I asked for a cheap drink recipe. But I know what I need. My tavern needs a second menu item more than I need a magic sword I can't even use yet. He threw in a free staff as a bonus. Not the employee kind, the wizard stick kind. Thing weighed 15 pounds, made of black hardwood, topped with a blunt geometric head that looked more like a war hammer than a magic wand. No crystal ball on top, no sparkles. Just a big stick I could equally use to cast spells or crack skulls. Mages in this world apparently believe in backup plans. Saul handed me a green crystal necklace with his magic signature inside, my ID badge for the fox girl. Gave me 3 silver coins and 10 copper for city entrance fees. Admitted he hasn't visited a human city in centuries, so he has no idea what things cost anymore, and opened a portal. Grabbed 2 gold coins from my tavern drawer for pocket money, left my new wizard staff leaning against the counter, double-checked the necklace, and stepped through the portal into a planted forest outside Riverside City. First time standing on this world's surface in actual sunlight. Bankrupt bartender, dungeon tavern operator, baby shadow wizard, and now secret agent on a Fox Girl rescue mission. My resume is getting absolutely unhinged. So my first mission as a baby shadow wizard was to sneak into a medieval city, find a Fox Girl, and smuggle her out without getting caught by Imperial soldiers. 3 days ago, I was crying into instant noodles. Growth is real. The portal dropped me in the most boring forest imaginable. Every tree the same height, same thickness, planted in perfect rows like a Christmas tree farm. Walked along a dirt path that gradually turned into a proper stone road, and suddenly I was surrounded by actual civilization. Farmers with hoes, hay carts creaking past, and adventurers everywhere, stomping around in dented armor, bragging about their kill counts, completely ignoring the random guy with an empty backpack walking among them. One tank-billed meathead elbowed my basket while passing and grunted, "Excuse me," without breaking stride. Classic. Good news though, this world's population is a genetic rainbow. Every hair color on the spectrum, faces from every ethnicity I could imagine. Some black-haired people with features like mine walking around totally unbothered. My modern Earth clothes didn't stand out either, because apparently fashion standards here are anything goes. I blended in like a chameleon at a paint store. Half an hour later, I reached Riverside City. Gray granite walls, open gates, 2 board guards with spears wrapped in faded red ribbons. They weren't checking IDs or papers, just occasionally stopping suspicious-looking traders for a quick chat. These guys were regular humans too, not adventurers. My confidence skyrocketed. Paid 10 copper coins at the gate. Didn't even have to talk. Just handed over the money and walked right in. My entire infiltration strategy was act normal and pay the entrance fee. James Bond would be disappointed, but it worked. Inside the city was a whole different world from the dungeon. Busy market streets, vendors yelling about vegetables and fabric, the smell of food and horse manure competing for air superiority. Mostly regular civilians going about their day. A few fancy-looking merchants and minor nobles cutting through the crowd. I asked around for the address Saul gave me, got pointed in the right direction 3 times, and found the house, a shabby 2-story building with peeling walls, shuttered windows, and a fat orange cat sleeping on the front steps. Very inconspicuous. Perfect safe house material. Knocked on the door. An old man with white hair opened it a crack, eyes sharp and suspicious. I'd been expecting some young warrior bodyguard type. Got a retired grandpa instead. Told him I was here for Lil. He immediately denied knowing anyone by that name and tried to close the door. Pulled out the green crystal necklace. Explained I had proof from Lil's family. The old man, Ball, didn't fully believe me, but wasn't stupid enough to turn away someone who clearly had real information. Let me inside with a warning. If I was lying, I'd be staying as a prisoner, because the Imperial patrol squads were crawling all over the city, and he wasn't about to let me walk out and report anything. Then he grabbed a sword and shield from behind some boxes. Turns out Grandpa Ball was a retired adventurer who'd been living as a blacksmith for 30 years. He casually mentioned his old skills weren't rusty yet. I believed him immediately. Old men who keep weapons within arm's reach aren't bluffing. He yelled up the stairs for Lil. Footsteps creaked on ancient wooden steps, and then she appeared, exactly like Saul's magic mirror had shown me. Golden hair tangled and unwashed, oversized rough linen clothes hanging off a skinny frame, and those fire-red fox ears poking up from the top of her head, white-tipped and trembling with nervous energy. Amber eyes staring down at me from the dark stairway, half terrified and half hoping. I held up the necklace. The green crystal caught the candlelight and projected a purple glow on the wall, Saul's magic signature activating when it touched my own baby wizard energy. Lil's eyes went wide. Her ears snapped straight up like satellite dishes. She froze for a full second, then flew down those stairs so fast I thought she'd trip. She took the necklace from my hands like it was made of butterfly wings, pressed it against her chest. Her tail, which she'd been hiding, escaped and wagged twice before she caught herself. This girl had been running and hiding for who knows how long. and a piece of jewelry from her great-great-whatever grandfather was the first safe thing she'd touched in weeks. She asked if Grandpa Saul was okay. Her voice was scratchy from days of barely talking. And here's the interesting part. She wasn't speaking the common language. My translation system picked up something different. Beastfolk language. Which means beastfolk come from somewhere else entirely, probably another continent. This world keeps getting bigger. Contacted Saul through the necklace, expecting an easy extraction. His response: can't teleport into the city. There's a legendary rank Imperial Mage stationed inside. You need to get outside the walls first. A demigod wizard got cock-blocked by city security. I mentally added, renegotiate payment, to my to-do list because this mission just got significantly harder than advertised. Ball turned out to be an absolute treasure of tactical intelligence. Knew the patrol schedules, which gates were watched, which streets were safe. Told us the North Gate was our best bet. Small, one guard, low traffic, patrols focused on the South and East gates. Advised us to avoid the main roads outside and cut through the forest instead, because meeting a patrol was more dangerous than meeting a wild animal. Also warned us not to make eye contact with adventurers because the Adventurers Guild shares intel with the Imperial patrols. This retired grandpa had been running counter-surveillance operations from his kitchen for weeks. Give this man a medal. We waited until dark. Lil transformed herself into an unrecognizable figure. Hood up covering ears and hair, tail wrapped tight around her waist under a belt, hunched posture making her look like a scrawny teenage boy carrying a ratty old bag. Professional disguise work. She'd clearly done this before. Lil knew the city's back alleys like she'd memorized a map. Led me through a maze of narrow passages, dodging every guard post and busy intersection with the precision of someone whose survival depended on knowing exactly which corners to avoid. Only person we encountered was an old vegetable lady packing up her basket who glanced at us once and went back to tying her cabbages. Perfect. North Gate. One guard. Guy was so bored he was counting coins in his belt pouch instead of watching the road. We walked past him with our heads down. Two unremarkable young people in cheap clothes. One with an empty basket, one with a dusty bundle. His eyes touched Lil for less than a second before sliding off like water on oil. We were nobody. We were invisible. We were out. The moment we cleared the gate, Lil's shoulders dropped 6 inches. The tension she'd been carrying evaporated so fast I could practically hear it hiss. Walked a mile down the main road, turned onto a side path, ducked into an empty patch of forest. I grabbed the necklace and called Saul. The portal appeared before I even finished the sentence. Purple energy ripping open the air like the old wizard had been sitting there with his finger on the button for the past 2 hours. He probably had been. Lil looked at the swirling gateway, fox ears poking free from her hood and twitching. Look back at me. I nodded. Your grandpa's waiting on the other side. Go. She clutched her little bundle, took a breath, and stepped through. Her tail slipped free from the belt at the last second, a flash of fire-red fur disappearing into purple light. I followed right behind. An hour after we vanished, Imperial mages showed up at our exact spot, sensed Saul's shadow magic residue, and immediately decided this was above their pay grade. Reported to the association, this isn't our problem, smart men. When a demigod wizard is involved, the correct career move is paperwork, not pursuit. I gave Ball my last 2 gold coins and some silver before leaving. He refused. I insisted. He refused harder. I told him Lil's ancestor was the kind of being who would show up personally to say thank you. And did he really want a creature that humans fear appearing on his doorstep in Riverside City? He took the money. Sometimes the best negotiation tactic is a polite threat wrapped in gratitude. Mission complete. Fox Girl rescued. 0 combat. 0 casualties. 1 retired adventurer grandpa properly compensated. 1 demigod wizard's family reunion facilitated. And 1 bartender's growing list of favors owed. By powerful beings extended by another entry. Not bad for a guy whose biggest achievement last week was drinking half a bottle of industrial-strength vodka and clicking a scam link. Back at Saul's tower, I got to witness the most powerful being I've ever met turn into a doting grandpa in real time. Saul, ancient demigod, shadow archmage, scariest creature in the dark forest, was gently untangling knots from a teenage fox girl's hair with the tenderness of someone handling a baby bird. His vertical cat eyes went soft. His scary aura evaporated. If I'd taken a photo, it would have ruined his reputation across the entire continent. Lil ran to him yelling, "Great ancestor," and her tail went absolutely berserk, wagging so hard it knocked dust off everything within a 3-foot radius. She told him her escape story. Broke free from Imperial captors using a high-level fog spell Saul himself taught her, survived 5 days eating wild berries and tree bark, then hid in Baal's attic without leaving once. This girl is tougher than 90% of the adventurers I've seen. Oh, and casually, she's a princess of the entire Beastfolk Empire, the nation currently at war with the Holy Empire. I rescued enemy royalty from behind enemy lines. My mission profile just upgraded from Fetch Quest to International Incident. Saul handed over the maple fruit wine recipe like it was nothing. Green quality, 1 tier above my oil beer, my second recipe ever. Then he threw in a permanent 50% discount on any future purchase from his shop. Then he gave me a communication stone so I can call him from the tavern without teleporting. 3 bonuses for 1 rescue mission. This old lizard wizard is the most generous employer I've ever had, and my only other employer was myself. Then came the real prize. Saul looked at me with that subtle smirk and said Lil couldn't stay at his tower because the shadow energy concentration would harm anyone below legendary rank. So he was sending her to work at my tavern, room and board deducted from her wages. I'd originally planned to recruit her, but after learning she was Saul's descendant and a foreign princess, I figured asking a demigod's granddaughter to bus tables might be politically insensitive. Saul suggesting it himself removed that problem entirely. Lil immediately launched into the most enthusiastic job interview I've ever witnessed. Pitched herself like her life depended on it. High-level fire mage, fast enough to outrun a lord-rank paladin who never even glimpsed her tail tip. Managed a military supply warehouse for 6 months. Can clean tables and wash cups and sweep floors. Not a pampered princess. Very hardworking. Please hire me. Then she said she'd eat literally anything, including something called a Morton worm, which I later gathered is basically a maggot that smells like rotting garbage and even scavenger animals refuse to touch. Saul's eye twitched when she said that. Pretty sure someone's dad is getting punished later for letting a princess eat bug larvae in the wilderness. I hired her on the spot. A fire mage fox princess who can outrun paladins, manage logistics, doesn't complain about food, and desperately needs a safe place to hide from an empire that wants to capture her. That's the best employee application I've received in any dimension. Meanwhile, and I only pieced this together much later, the Holy Empire went absolutely nuclear trying to figure out who helped Lil escape. Imperial knights with time-freezing crystal balls worth an entire city's annual taxes. A lord-rank paladin personally galloping to the capital to hand evidence to the king. And the king himself, a 200-year-old demigod dragon knight named Charlie who literally conquered the continent, sat alone in a secret vault trying to use dragon eyes to see through the shadow covering my face in the time replay footage. He couldn't. Whatever power was protecting my identity, probably my lazy, napping, complaining dungeon boss, operated on a level that made a demigod dragon rider feel genuine pressure for the first time in decades. Charlie couldn't tell if he was dealing with a mythic-level being or something even older and weirder. The most powerful man on the continent was losing sleep over me. A bankrupt bartender with 130 health points and the combat ability of a damp sponge. Somewhere in the cosmic hierarchy, there's been a clerical error of magnificent proportions. Lil hugged Saul goodbye. Her tail slipped free one more time in a flash of red fur, and we stepped onto the teleport array together. New employee acquired. Recipe secured. International diplomatic crisis accidentally triggered. Just another Tuesday in the dungeon bar business. Got my first employee home and immediately realized I'd become the kind of boss who promises things will get better eventually. The words just fell out of my mouth, like I'd been practicing corporate motivation speeches in my sleep. Lil looked at me with those big amber eyes full of pure, unquestioning trust, and honestly that made it worse. Nobody should believe their boss that much on day one. Her living quarters? The basement brewing room. Stone floor, empty shelves, a plastic water faucet in the corner. I felt terrible about it until she cheerfully informed me that for the past week she'd been sleeping curled up on burlap sacks in a crawl space where she couldn't stand upright, and before that she ate tree bark for 5 days straight in the wilderness. My cold basement was apparently a luxury upgrade. The bar 4, acceptable housing, is underground, literally and figuratively. Teaching her the shower was an experience. This girl is a high-level fire mage who can cast fog spells that fool entire Imperial patrols, but a faucet that produces hot water on demand nearly broke her brain. IT comes out when you turn it, fox ears vibrating at maximum frequency, tail going haywire. Apparently, in her world, hot running water requires a dedicated water mage to recharge the pipes every few days, and only rich nobles can afford it. My dungeon bathroom is fancier than aristocratic plumbing. Thank you, mysterious dungeon core logistics department. While she showered, I finally sat down with the maple fruit wine recipe. Green quality, one full tier above my oil beer disaster. The ingredients are scattered across 4 different dungeon floors. Maple tree sap from floor 18, red maple fruits from 17, crystallized flower petals from 49, and red berries from floor 2. 18-hour fermentation time. Serves cold automatically without ice. And get this, it slightly boosts ice magic perception. My beer has stat buffs now. Selling price, 2 gold coins per cup, double the black rye ale. 1 catch, needs special maplewood barrels. Check the upgrade shop, found them for 10 gold each. Bought 4 immediately. They appeared in the brewing room like Amazon Prime for fantasy equipment. Pale yellow wood, delicate grain pattern, smelling like maple syrup's sophisticated older cousin. Each one holds 200 liters, double the regular barrels. Tomorrow I'm doing another multi-floor ingredient shopping marathon. The upgrade system still thinks my bar is garbage, by the way. Same brutal review. Drafty, pathetic drink selection, hideous decor, zero taste. Shocking anyone comes here. My own management software cyberbullies me daily, and I can't even file a complaint. Ran the numbers on upgrades. Small kitchen needs 100 gold and 50 perfect reviews. Got the money, short on reviews. Employee quarters cost 300 gold. Need that eventually, so Lil isn't sleeping next to fermenting barrels forever. The exam in 26 days needs 5 returning customers, 500 gold total, and 30% approval. Already halfway on gold. Approval rating is cruising above 95%. Looking manageable unless I jinx it. Lil came downstairs freshly washed and transformed. Golden hair damp but shining. Fox ears fluffy and clean, color back in her face. The logistics department had already set out 2 dinners. Braised pork rice with fried eggs and seaweed soup. Lil's portion had an extra egg because apparently the dungeon's catering AI detected she was malnourished. This invisible kitchen staff notices everything. She demolished that rice bowl with disciplined speed. Fast, but not sloppy, military precision eating. Told me it was 100 times better than the watery porridge she'd been surviving on. Her tail wagged so hard it almost knocked over a bar stool. After dinner, I ran her through training. Atomizer operations, remote controls, helmet fitting for skeleton customers, record keeping on the magic parchment. She memorized everything in one pass. One demonstration, a few practice runs on invisible buttons, done. This princess managed military supply warehouses. Teaching her bar equipment was like teaching a chef how to use a microwave. 8 o'clock bell rang. Doors open. First night with actual staff. I've got a fox-eared princess/fire mage/military logistics veteran working my bar for room and board. My menu is about to double from 1 terrible drink to 1 terrible drink plus 1 that might actually be good. And somewhere far away, the most powerful king on the continent is having stressed dreams about the mysterious shadow figure who stole his prisoner, which is me, a guy who just spent 20 minutes explaining how a shower faucet works to a teenage fox girl. Life in the dungeon keeps getting weirder, and I keep getting more okay with it. 8 o'clock bell rings, door swings open instantly, and nobody's there. I'm staring at an empty doorway like an idiot. The corridor is deserted. Not a single creature in sight. I check the corners, check behind the furniture, check if maybe the wind blew the door open. Except there is no wind in a dungeon. Underground tunnels don't have breezes unless someone installs ventilation, and my lazy boss definitely hasn't bothered. I'm standing there scratching my head when Lil casually goes, "Boss, the customer is already inside." Under the counter. This girl has been working for me for approximately 45 minutes, and she's already better at detecting customers than I am. High-level fire, mage senses picking up shadow magic signatures while I'm squinting at an empty hallway. I'm the owner, and she's already carrying the team. I lean over the counter and look down. There's a puddle of darkness on my floor that's boiling. Not metaphorically, literally bubbling like a pot of water someone forgot on the stove. Dark purple smoke puffs rising and getting sucked back in, the whole blob pulsing between solid and liquid like it can't decide what state of matter it wants to be. At the center, a deep purple glow spinning slowly. My monster encyclopedia pops up, and I read the most heartbreaking backstory I've encountered since arriving in this world. Shadow King Teaser. Legendary rank. Built an entire Shadow Kingdom from nothing. 999 years ago, the dungeon core, freshly moved in and already lazy, approached him with a job offer. Bring your whole nation into the dungeon as floor 60. Teaser didn't just refuse. He insulted the dungeon core, mocked it, humiliated it. 5 hours later, his kingdom was rubble and he was the only survivor, sentenced to work in the dungeon for 500,000 years to pay off his personal debt, then another 500,000 years to earn back his people one by one. He's been grinding for a millennium and has only freed 3 citizens so far. 3. Out of an entire nation. The encyclopedia actually asked me, with feeling, to please serve this lonely king a sweet drink, because sweetness is the only thing that temporarily eases his guilt. My bar management system developed empathy for one specific customer. I didn't even know it could do that. Then the shadow puddle rose up off the floor like someone pulling a 2D drawing into 3D reality, and standing before me was a rat. A 1.5-meter tall rat person in the most immaculate formal outfit I've ever seen. Black tailcoat with perfect creases. Purple silk cravat with a shadow crystal brooch. A royal scepter topped with a tiny bat sculpture with amethyst eyes. A crown made of solidified darkness with flowing purple patterns. All of this on a gray-furred rat head with a pointy nose, whiskers, round black eyes, and 2 circular ears poking through the crown. His actual rat tail, hairless, scaly, exactly like a regular mouse tail, extended through a custom hole in the back of his coat and was posed in this deliberately elegant curve next to his cane. Royal tail etiquette. This rat practices tail posture. My brain short-circuited. The outfit screamed, distinguished monarch. The face screamed, the thing my landlord's cat used to chase. These 2 images collided in my head and produced a feeling I can only describe as the uncanny valley, but for rodents. Not disgust. More like my visual processing software encountered an error it wasn't programmed to handle. And then he spoke, and his voice was completely wrong for a rat. Deep, warm, cultured, like a retired diplomat reading poetry at a charity gala. Every syllable perfectly enunciated. He'd heard about my new sweet wine recipe and came specifically to taste it. I had to break the news that the maple fruit wine doesn't exist yet. Got the recipe today, haven't collected ingredients. Need 18 hours to ferment. Earliest I can serve it is 2 nights from now. His little black rat eyes flickered. But not with disappointment, with relief. 1,000 years of waiting and someone tells him, 2 more days. And he's genuinely happy, because that's practically instant by his standards. 1,000 years I've already waited. 2 more days is merely the blink of an eye. He dropped a bag of 50 gold coins on my counter as a deposit. 50. For a drink that doesn't exist yet. Said he'd bring his 3 freed shadow citizens with him when he returns. Then he tapped his cane on the floor in some kind of shadow aristocrat farewell gesture, bowed with one hand on his chest. His coattails fluttered. His rat tail did a little aristocratic flip and melted back into a shadow puddle that slid across the floor, under furniture, through the door crack, and vanished into the corridor. Gone. Like he was never here. Just a heavy bag of gold proving I didn't hallucinate a formally dressed rat king ordering wine from the future. I asked Lil if she knew anything about this shadow royalty. She explained that Saul has been alive for tens of thousands of years, and occasionally his shadow experiments produce sentient beings that get scattered across the world. Teaser was probably one of those lucky survivors. Also, every shadow-related creature in existence has some connection to her great-grandfather. Saul is basically the godfather of all things dark and purple in this world. Lil also dropped some useful economic intelligence. Higher-level dungeon monsters don't need food or water, have nowhere to spend money, and get paid in gold by the dungeon core for doing their jobs and for killing adventurers. The Adventurers' dropped equipment gets sold back to the Adventurers Guild at premium prices, converted to gold, and distributed to the monsters who earned the kills. Basically, my customers are sitting on centuries of accumulated wealth with nothing to buy. My tavern is the first store that's ever opened in their entire economic ecosystem. I am running the only business in a closed economy full of rich, bored, immortal creatures who've never had anything to spend money on. This isn't a bar. It's a gold mine with a beer tap. The rest of the night went smoothly. 30 dragonblood goblins showed up under Scarlet's command. The one missing a chunk of ear, my most reliable regular at this point. 2 drinks each, 60 gold, clockwork. When I mentioned the new sweet wine coming in 2 days, Scarlet's remaining ear perked up so hard it almost detached. He promised to drag Grizz himself back for the launch. Word-of-mouth marketing powered by goblin excitement. Solon and his skeleton crew came through too. Helmets on, soul fire blazing, happily huffing beer mist like the world's most macabre hookah lounge. That short young skeleton is already organizing group trips from the mining caves, planning logistics like a tiny bone-covered event coordinator. Lil handled her first shift like she'd been doing it for years. Serving drinks, operating atomizers, recording orders, smooth, quiet, efficient. Having a second pair of hands changed everything. For the first time since opening, I actually had moments where I wasn't frantically running between the bar and the tables. I could breathe. I could think. I could stand behind the counter for 30 consecutive seconds without something demanding my attention. After closing, the numbers were beautiful. 208 gold coins earned tonight, for 112 total in the vault. 258 soul fire points harvested. 138 perfect reviews accumulated across 3 nights. My approval rating is holding steady in the stratosphere. Converted my soul fire into 6 attribute points, 3 stamina, 3 spirit. Still splitting the difference between strong enough to work and magical enough to eventually throw shadow fireballs. The warmth flooded through my body again, fatigue retreating, muscles tightening. I'm slowly becoming less pathetic, 1 stat point at a time. Then I did something I'd been waiting days for. Opened the upgrade menu and built the small kitchen. 50 perfect reviews, gone. 100 gold coins, gone. Worth every penny and every 5-star rating. My broken tavern level 0 is finally getting its first real facility. Once that kitchen is operational, I can serve food, which means Grizz stops complaining about having nothing to eat with his beer, which means higher tier monsters start showing up, which means more gold, more reviews, more upgrades. The flywheel is starting to spin. I was sitting there feeling proud of myself when noise erupted from the corridor outside. Loud, chaotic, getting closer. And I realized with a jolt of panic that I'd forgotten to close the front door after flipping the sign to closed. Whatever was making that racket was heading straight for my wide open, supposedly shut for the night tavern. 3 nights in business. Fox Princess employee acquired. Rat King deposit collected. Kitchen under construction. Shadow wizard powers slowly growing. And now something loud and unexpected approaching my unlocked door at 2 in the morning. Never a dull moment in the monster bar industry. So I'm sitting there counting gold at 2 in the morning with the door wide open like an amateur. And who comes stomping in? Grizz. Not battle Grizz, construction Grizz. Yellow hard hat, rolled up sleeves, work boots, and a wooden pipe clamped between his teeth, leaking clouds of white smoke that smelled like a dragon sneezed on a campfire. He heard about the new sweet wine through the goblin grapevine. Scarlet told him. Scarlet heard it from me. Information travels fast when your customer base has nothing to do between shifts except gossip and get murdered by adventurers. Behind him, 30 dragonblood goblins in matching work uniforms carried enough building materials to construct a small house. Lumber, iron chains, wall panels, metal fittings, and at the back, a sharpened tree trunk wrapped in rope. Their portable battering ram. Because goblins apparently solve every architectural problem by hitting it really hard first and measuring never. I pointed at the wall next to the brewing room door and said, "Kitchen goes here." Grizz clapped once. 30 goblins yelled, starting work, so loud the ceiling rained dust, and 4 of them immediately charged the stone wall with their battering ram at full sprint. The wall exploded. Behind it was a swirling void of purple magical chaos, lightning arcs, dark energy storms, the kind of thing that would vaporize me instantly. I backed up fast. Grizz puffed his pipe and said, Relax. We're professionals. Like they build kitchens inside magical hurricanes every Tuesday. I stopped asking questions. Grizz offered me a hit from his pipe, dragon breath grass, that only grows in dragon blood-soaked soil. He described the sensation as a baby dragon doing a war dance inside your mouth. I declined so fast I nearly fell over backwards. My mouth is for drinking beer I can't stomach, not hosting reptilian dance parties. Then Lil came downstairs with wet hair and met Grizz, and this absolute battlefield psychopath suddenly transformed into a gentleman. Straightened his posture, softened his voice, introduced himself like he was at a diplomatic reception. I stared at him with my jaw hanging open. 3 days of watching this goblin chug oil beer, brag about killing elite adventurers, and literally demolish my property, and now he has manners? He caught me staring and got defensive. I'm an educated dragon blood goblin, not some wild goblin. Thank you very much. His crew behind him exchanged looks that suggested they'd never seen this behavior either. I was so exhausted I could barely stand. Hadn't slept properly since yesterday. Rescued a princess, crossed dimensions, ran a bar shift, spent my savings on upgrades. Told Grizz I was dying and stumbled upstairs. Shoulder checked the door frame on the way in. Face hit the pillow and I evaporated into unconsciousness. Woke up at 11 to find the kitchen nearly finished. 60 square meters of stone and wood cooking space. Charcoal fire pit in the center with an iron grate. 3 hanging pots, knives, spatulas, water faucet connected to underground plumbing. Washing basin, cutting board, and storage shelves along the walls. Basic but functional. My tavern officially serves food now, once I figure out where to actually buy food. Asked Grizz where to get ingredients. He asked what kind, human food or monster food. Apparently those are completely different categories in this world. I need both, because I eat human food and my customers eat whatever monsters eat, and I have zero idea what that even means yet. My bar now has a kitchen with no groceries, a fox princess employee who ate maggots in the wild, and a construction crew that treats solid rock walls like suggestions. Progress is weird down here. Grizz dropped some useful knowledge before his crew packed up. Monsters eat 2 types of food, regular stuff and special attribute-enhanced ingredients. Regular food? He had no idea where to buy it in the dungeon. Told me to ask Saul. Special monster food? There's a traveling merchant who shows up on floor 80 every month on Tide Day, the 15th, selling exotic ingredients you can't find anywhere else in the dungeon. Accepts Imperial gold coins because the dungeon core's currency rules are absolute law down here. Nobody argues with the entity that can delete your entire kingdom in 5 hours. Just ask Teaser. Grizz also casually mentioned that Imperial gold coins aren't as ordinary as they look, and that I'd understand why when I got stronger. Very mysterious. Very unhelpful. Classic Grizz. Drops a bombshell of cryptic information, then changes the subject before you can ask follow-up questions. His construction goblins finished the kitchen, cleaned up every speck of debris like a professional crew should, and marched out carrying garbage bags full of rubble. The kitchen was done. 60 square meters of stone-walled cooking space with a charcoal pit, iron grate, 3 pots, knives, a water faucet connected to the underground plumbing, a washing basin, and storage shelves. Basic, rough around the edges, smaller than I'd like, but functional. My broken tavern level 0 now has its first upgrade. Baby steps toward not being cyber-bullied by my own management system. Grizz fist-bumped me on the way out. A dragon blood goblin warlord fist-bumped me. If someone painted that moment, it would be the most confusing piece of art in any world's gallery. Lunch appeared on the counter. Braised pork rib noodles, crispy sweet and sour pork, and ice-cold plum juice. The logistics department keeps outdoing itself. I'm eating better as a dungeon prisoner than I ever did as a free man on Earth. Lil sat across from me eating at a normal human pace for the first time, which meant she was finally starting to feel safe. She even went back for thirds, which I took as a positive sign that I'll eat anything including horror maggots. Survival mode was switching off. After lunch I loaded up my backpack with the pickaxe, my rusty sword, and some empty pouches, told Lil to hold down the fort, and headed out to collect maple fruit wine ingredients. For stops, floor 17 for red maple fruits, floor 18 for golden maple tree sap, floor 49 for crystallized flower petals, and floor 2 for red berries on the way home. Standard multi-floor shopping marathon. I'm basically a delivery driver who delivers himself to the ingredients instead of the other way around. Floor 17 stopped me in my tracks. I materialized on the shore of a massive underground lake, so wide I couldn't see the other side. The water was deep ink green, still as a mirror, occasionally burping up a lazy bubble from whatever lived at the bottom. Little silver fish darted between smooth, dark pebbles in the shallows. The cave ceiling was impossibly high, dozens of meters up, which made the whole space feel open and airy instead of claustrophobic. But the real showstopper was behind me. I turned around, and my brain needed a full 3 seconds to process what I was seeing. Red. Everywhere. An ocean of fire-colored maple trees stretching to the horizon in every direction. Thousands upon thousands of them, each one at least 10 meters tall, with trunks thick enough to need both arms to hug. Every single leaf was the most vivid, saturated, alive red I'd ever seen. Not autumn-dying red, but burning alive red, like someone had frozen a wildfire mid-explosion and turned it into a forest. The blue glow from the corridor moss mixed with the red canopy and created this surreal purple-tinged atmosphere that made the whole place look like a painting someone spent their entire life working on. I stood there like a tourist who accidentally walked into paradise. For a guy who'd spent the last 3 days in stone corridors, swamps, mines, and haunted forests, this was the first genuinely beautiful thing I'd encountered in this world. If I ever get a vacation day, I'm coming back here with a blanket and a picnic. The trees were loaded with dark red fruits the size of fists, hanging from every branch like Christmas ornaments designed by someone who only had one color of paint. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. One small problem. They were all growing 7 to 8 meters off the ground, and I am a 1 meter 70-something human with the vertical leap of a sleepy cat. No ladder, no climbing gear, no telekinesis. Just me, a rusty sword, and a profound sense of inadequacy staring up at fruit I couldn't reach. I was standing there trying to figure out if I could throw my pickaxe at a branch hard enough to knock fruit loose. Terrible idea, I know, when I heard trees snapping somewhere in the forest. Big trees. Something enormous was moving through the woods, and it was heading my way. Old Ivan would have panicked. Current Ivan has been stared down by rock golems, shadow creatures, and a formally dressed rat king. My fear threshold has been permanently recalibrated. I just stood there on the lakeshore, hands on my hips, watching the tree lean like I was waiting for a bus. Then I felt breathing on the back of my neck. Not wind, not a draft. Hot, rhythmic breathing, like someone was holding a hairdryer behind my head. The disturbance in the forest? Distraction. The real thing was behind me. In the lake. Had been there the whole time. I turned around very, very slowly and found myself nose to nose with a snake head the size of a compact car. 2 enormous vertical slit eyes staring at me from about 1 meter away. The pupils contracted once, focused on my face, and I could see my own terrified reflection in them. A tiny human standing on a muddy shore being personally inspected by something that could swallow him like a vitamin pill. My monster encyclopedia popped up with its usual impeccable timing. Titan Python Alexander. Elite rank. 42 meters long. Carries a trace of actual Titan bloodline. Was rescued from a berserk Titan by a black sphere that suddenly appeared. Obviously the dungeon core doing its mysterious savior thing. Started at 6 meters, grew to 42 over the years. The encyclopedia helpfully asked if I'd like a bone-loosening massage from a python, which I interpreted as dark humor from my management system. Also noted, can't speak, but is very intelligent, so don't treat it like it's stupid. 42 meters. I tried to visualize that. A standard basketball court is about 28 meters. This snake was 1.5 basketball courts long. Its head alone was bigger than my entire body, and it was close enough for me to count its scales. Hey Alexander, nice to meet you. I'm Ivan. I run the Monster Tavern upstairs. I need some of those red fruits up there, but I'm too short to reach them. Any chance you could help a guy out? I talked to a building-sized snake like I was asking a tall friend to grab something off the top shelf at the supermarket. This is my life now. This is completely normal. I am fine. Alexander tilted his head. Not in a sizing up prey way. More in a, interesting little creature way. Like a dog encountering a hamster for the first time. His pupils did that slow contraction thing again, processing my request. Then, Without any fuss, a section of tail rose out of the lake behind me. That tail segment was thicker than my waist, covered in deep green scales that glistened with lake water, and it moved with a gentleness that was completely absurd for something that size. It was like watching a crane operator handle a crystal vase. Every movement deliberate, controlled, performed at a speed slow enough for me to track and understand that this was help, not attack. The tail reached over my head. I instinctively ducked even though it was 2 meters above me, and wrapped around a thick branch loaded with red maple fruits. One gentle tug, and the branch bent down to chest height, fruits swaying at perfect picking distance. A branch thick as my arm, held in that tail like it weighed nothing. Alexander rested his car-sized head on the muddy shore, laid it flat, and watched me with those enormous patient eyes. Waiting. The snake equivalent of, go ahead, take your time. I pulled out a cloth bag and started picking. Each fruit was heavy, smooth-skinned, firm, about 20 grams per piece. Quick math, 60 grams per barrel, for barrels, 12 minimum. I picked 40 because a bartender who runs out of ingredients mid-service is a bartender who deserves what happens next. Filled the bottom layer of my backpack with dark red fruits, each one looking like a solidified drop of venous blood. Very appetizing description, I know, but that's genuinely what they looked like. All done, Alexander. You can let go now. The tail released. The branch whipped back into position so fast it launched a shower of red maple leaves into the air. They spiraled down like burning confetti, drifting onto the mirror-still lake's surface and floating there in slowly expanding ripple circles. It was accidentally one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen, and it was caused by a giant snake letting go of a tree. I patted Alexander's tail tip, the section still resting on shore. Cool, smooth scales under my palm, like touching polished stone. He lifted his head, blinked once with those enormous eyes, then turned and slid back into the lake. 42 meters of python entering water without making a splash. The surface barely rippled. How does something that massive move that quietly? Physics doesn't apply to legendary snakes apparently. His head popped up one last time from the center of the lake, gave me a single slow nod. I swear it was a nod, and then submerged. Gone. The lake went still again. Just floating red leaves and fading ripples proving that the world's most helpful giant snake had been there at all. I promised him a drink next time I visit. A 42-meter snake getting a cup of beer sounds like a logistics problem I'll deal with later. Maybe I need a bigger cup. Maybe I need a bathtub. We'll figure it out. Standing on the shore of that underground lake, backpack full of ruby-red fruits, surrounded by an infinite forest of burning maple trees, I had one of those rare moments of genuine appreciation. This world is insane, dangerous, confusing, and occasionally tries to kill me through my own employees. But sometimes, just sometimes, it's so breathtakingly beautiful that a bankrupt bartender from a dying county town forgets he's supposed to be miserable. Then I remembered I still had 3 more floors to visit and snapped out of it. No time for poetry when you're running a business. Next stop, floor 18 for maple tree sap. What I didn't know, and honestly wouldn't have cared about even if I did, was that a squad of silver-ranked adventurers had been hiding in the trees on floor 17, watching the entire thing with Alexander. Every single second. The giant snake helping me pick fruit. Me patting its tail like it was a golden retriever. Me casually teleporting away like I owned the place. Their leader, some axe-wielding meathead named Bartle, had apparently been recording everything with a magic video crystal from the moment Alexander's head popped out of the lake. He got the full show, 42-meter Titan python gently bending a tree branch for a guy with a rusty pickaxe, said guy thanking the snake and promising it beer, then vanishing in a flash of light without using any of the normal dungeon exits. The best part? Their scout immediately suggested kidnapping me to learn my secrets, and Bartle slapped him down so fast the guy's cheek turned red. Use your pig brain, Bartle told him. A regular person who can freely teleport inside the dungeon and makes floor bosses do chores for him is not someone a silver-ranked team should mess with, smart man. Wrong conclusion about what I am, but excellent survival instincts. Instead of fighting me, they decided to sell my information to the Adventurers Guild. Recorded footage of me buddy-buddy with a legendary snake, packaged as premium intelligence. These guys turned my fruit-picking trip into a business opportunity. I respect the hustle even though I'm the product being hustled. They teleported out using return stones, fancy blue crystals that zap you back to the nearest city. Meanwhile, I was already on floor 18, completely oblivious, having the time of my life. Floor 18 might be the most beautiful place I've seen in any world, and I'm including Earth in that comparison. A real sun, or at least a dungeon projection so convincing it radiated actual warmth, hung in the sky above an infinite ocean of maple trees. But these weren't the all-red maples from floor 17. Each tree had two colors, golden yellow on the outer canopy, fire red on the inside near the trunk. When the wind blew, the red leaves flipped over the gold ones, making the entire forest look like it was simultaneously made of molten gold and living flame. The colors merged and separated and merged again in waves that rolled from the base of the hill all the way to the horizon. I appeared on top of a grassy hill, soft as carpet, dotted with tiny purple wildflowers, and just stood there with my mouth open. Warm autumn breeze carrying maple sweet air. Sunlight that felt like October back on Earth. Golden light filtering through a billion leaves, casting dancing spots on the forest floor below. The sound of wind through the canopy was different here too. Not the heavy rustling of floor 17, but a bright, crisp shimmer, like thousands of tiny gold coins being gently shaken. I said something very eloquent. I believe my exact words were, "Holy crap, this is gorgeous." Then I remembered I was on a schedule and hustled down the hill to tap some trees. Maple sap collection turned out to be the most peaceful activity I'd done since arriving in this world. Found a big tree, carved a 45-degree angle cut in the bark with my knife, and immediately got rewarded with a trickle of golden red sap that smelled like someone crossbred honey with fresh autumn air. Not thick like maple syrup. Thinner, clearer, with a woody finish that lingered in your nose. Dripped into my flask one drop at a time with tiny musical plinks. I sat on a tree root in warm sunlight, listening to sap drip and leaves rustle, and for the first time since getting scammed into another dimension, I felt genuinely relaxed. No monsters attacking. No customers demanding oil beer. No existential career crisis. Just a guy sitting under a golden tree waiting for his flask to fill up. If the dungeon had put a fishing pole nearby, I might have never left. Each flask took about 10 minutes. I needed 800 milliliters minimum for 4 barrels, but brought 4 1-liter flasks because I'm learning to stockpile. Between filling sessions, I'd carve a new cut, swap flasks, and just exist. Breathe the sweet air. Watch leaves spiral down. Feel the sun. Then my sharpened senses, thank you, spirit attribute points, picked up something that didn't belong in the peaceful soundtrack. Under the wind and the dripping sap and the leaf shimmer, a new sound, tiny feet on fallen leaves. Lots of them, getting closer. Very soft, very light, very numerous. I spun around and found myself face to face with a platoon of walking mushrooms. 10 of them, waist height, round as bowling balls, wearing tiny wooden armor. Their caps were pale brown with dark ring patterns, edges curling up slightly, and underneath those caps, 2 enormous, perfectly round, shiny black eyes per mushroom, staring up at me with the intensity of puppies who just heard the treat bag crinkle. Some held sharpened wooden spears. Others carried tiny bamboo blowguns. All weapons were pointed at the ground. Zero aggression. Maximum curiosity. They looked like a garden gnome SWAT team that forgot they were supposed to be intimidating. My encyclopedia confirmed they're exactly as adorable as they look. Spore mushroom people, gentle, shy, vegetarian, live in symbiosis with the maple trees, eat sugar that seeps from the roots. Their only defense mechanism is getting scared, poofing out a cloud of spores, and then collectively playing dead. Not fighting back and playing dead, just playing dead. Their entire combat strategy is lie down and hope for the best. They communicate by humming to each other. On full moon nights, the entire forest fills with their chorus. They're also apparently the best maple sap collectors in existence, born with an instinctive ability to judge sap quality that no other creature can match. And here's the golden detail at the bottom of their encyclopedia entry. They love hearing stories from outsiders. If I tell them a story they like, they might help me out. So there I was, sitting on a tree root in a magical autumn forest, holding a half-full flask of golden sap, surrounded by 10 armored mushrooms with anime eyes, and my employee handbook was suggesting I perform a storytelling audition for produce. This is the most absurd career trajectory in the history of career trajectories. 4 days ago, I was a bankrupt bar owner drowning in 96 proof vodka. Now I'm an entry-level shadow wizard who runs a monster tavern, employs a fox princess, and needs to impress sentient fungi with his narrative skills to optimize his ingredient supply chain. I looked at those 10 pairs of round black eyes. They looked back at me. One of them tilted its mushroom cap sideways, which I assume is the mushroom equivalent of a curious head tilt. I cleared my throat. If these little guys wanted a story, I'd give them a story. I've got a lifetime of Earth experiences that would blow their mushroom minds. They've never left this forest, never heard of pizza, never seen a car, never experienced the soul-crushing despair of watching your bar go bankrupt on Valentine's Day while couples walk past your window holding cotton candy. Actually, maybe I'll workshop that last one. Don't want to depress the mushrooms. The sap kept dripping. The sun kept shining. The mushrooms kept staring. And I started thinking about which story from my old world would translate best to an audience of woodland fungi wearing tiny wooden helmets. My life is completely ridiculous, and I've stopped fighting it. Turns out my monster translation system has a bug. Works on dragons, goblins, skeletons, shadow kings, giant snakes, but cute mushroom people? Nothing. Every single thing they said came through as mushroom, mushroom. That's it. 2 words. On repeat. My universal translator crashed because apparently fungi language isn't in the database. So I invented a new communication method on the spot. I guess what they mean, they nod or shake their little mushroom caps. Like the world's most adorable game of charades played with sentient vegetables wearing wooden armor. First guess. You want me to leave? Vigorous head shake, whole body wobbling. Second guess. You need help? Enthusiastic nodding, cap bouncing like a basketball. Third guess. Someone's attacking your village? Confused sideways head tilt at 45 degrees, which I interpreted as, we're too cute to have enemies. Try again, dummy. Fourth guess. Something's wrong at home. Half nod, half shake, followed by quieter mushrooming. Close but missing details they couldn't explain through yes or no questions. They agreed to wait while I finished filling my sap flasks. All 10 of them squatted in a perfect semicircle behind me, weapons across their laps, watching me collect tree juice with the intensity of toddlers watching someone blow up a balloon. Occasionally they'd mushroom at each other, probably debating why humans put tree blood in leather bags. Valid question, honestly. I had a brief, evil thought. What if I teleported away the second my flasks were full, let them panic, then teleported back? Would they cry? Would they jump for joy? I'm a terrible person for even thinking it. These little guys trusted me completely, and I was mentally designing pranks. I blamed the dungeon for breaking my moral compass. Followed them through the forest on the most chaotic path imaginable, squeezing between tree trunks, crawling under bushes, zigzagging through gaps only mushroom-sized creatures would consider a road. Their little legs moved fast, but covered about 3 centimeters per step. So our actual travel speed was elderly tourist pace. The leader kept checking over its shoulder every 30 seconds to make sure I hadn't wandered off. I told it to relax because there's no universe where I can't keep up with something that walks on mushroom stems. Their village nearly broke my brain. Dozens of mushroom houses. Actual buildings shaped like giant colorful toadstools with round doors and round windows, leaf curtains, pebble mosaic decorations around the door frames. Red ones with white spots, purple ones with gold stripes, orange ones with dark rings. Paths made of crushed bark and sand, lined with little wooden posts holding glowing moss lanterns. It looked like someone ripped out a page from a children's picture book and built it at full scale underground. The mushroom people themselves came in every color, not just the brown ones who found me, but red, orange, white, purple, spotted, striped, glossy, fluffy. When I walked into the village, every single one stopped what they were doing and stared. Several dozen pairs of shiny black grape eyes locked onto me simultaneously. Front row mushrooms started laying flower wreaths at my feet. Back row ones stretched their caps up as high as possible, chanting, mushroom, mushroom, in unison like a tiny concert crowd trying to see the stage. Then the ground started shaking and a 3-meter armored bear walked out of the forest. Meet Rackle, floor 18's boss, a titan earth bear covered in stone armor with golden red fur and one chewed-up ear. He introduced himself casually, no intimidation, just a giant bear being neighborly. At this point in my dungeon career, enormous predators introducing themselves politely barely registers on my surprise meter. Rackle was there as a translator. The mushroom people called him specifically because they knew I couldn't understand. Mushroom, mushroom. And then, this massive stone-armored warbear opened his mouth and squeezed out two high-pitched, mushroom, mushroom, sounds to talk to them. Like a bodybuilder doing a baby voice. He caught me staring and got embarrassed. "Don't look at me like that," he grumbled. "Everyone wants to mushroom talk with these little cuties." His ears twitched with shame. Greatest moment of my new life. He bribed me for 5 maple fruits before explaining anything. Inhaled them without chewing. Then finally told me the deal. These mushroom people brew something called maple honey from maple syrup. They don't eat it themselves. They just make it compulsively because that's what mushroom people do. The earth bears eat most of it, but there are too many mushroom villages producing too much honey. They tried giving surplus to adventurers, but greedy ones scared them off. Now they're drowning in stockpiled maple honey with nowhere to put it. I looked where Rackle pointed. Dozens of mushroom shell barrels, each one as tall as a mushroom person, stacked under a crooked maple tree. Mountains of surplus honey with no buyers. The little leader mushroom waddled over carrying a sample jar that was clearly too heavy for it, struggling with every step. I grabbed it before the poor thing collapsed, popped the wax seal, and golden amber honey smell poured out. Warm, sweet, delicate maple fragrance. The encyclopedia confirmed it. Green quality maple honey, excellent brewing ingredient for mead. These adorable fungi just handed me a free, renewable, high-quality ingredient supply for a drink I haven't even invented yet. They need someone to take their honey. I need ingredients for new recipes. This is the most wholesome business partnership in the history of commerce, and it was negotiated entirely through the word mushroom. So my dungeon boss is officially the laziest entity in existence. I mentally asked about upgrading my translation system to understand mushroom language, and before I even finished the thought, that drowsy voice popped into my head. Too busy, lazy, to bother. Wherever there are sprites, there'll be someone nearby who can translate. Good enough. Then silence. Conversation over. My employer just admitted in parentheses that busy means lazy, not even trying to hide it anymore. At least he's honest about his dishonesty. Rackle the bear explained the actual linguistic situation, and it's fascinating in the most frustrating way possible. The mushroom people don't technically have a language. They communicate through some kind of psychic sprite network, a direct mind-to-mind connection that only beings with natural sprite affinity can tap into. The mushroom sounds coming out of their mouths are basically verbal fidgeting, meaningless vocalizations that some academic lunatic categorized as sprite language, even though it's not really a language at all. My universal translator can handle every structured language on the continent. Dungeon speak, Imperial Common, Dwarf, Beastfolk, Elf, but it chokes on psychic mushroom telepathy because there's nothing to translate. The sounds are just sounds. The meaning travels through channels my brain can't access. Rackle, meanwhile, is the only earth bear in existence born with natural sprite affinity. He was extremely proud of this fact. Puffed out his stone-armored chest, perked up his chewed ear, practically posed for a portrait. A 3-meter armored war bear bragging about being able to chat with inch-tall mushroom people. This world's priorities are magnificent. While I was processing my permanent linguistic disability, the mushroom people finished their emergency council meeting. Their leader broke from the huddle, sprinted to the fanciest mushroom house in the village. Purple cap with gold patterns, bead curtain over the door, clearly the mayor's residence, disappeared inside, and came running back, carrying something in both hands. Little guy was sprinting so hard his wooden armor was rattling. He held it up over his head like a tiny warrior presenting a sacred offering to his king. I reached down and took it. A ring. A small, impossibly cute ring with a miniature mushroom on top. Same pale brown color as the leader's cap, cold and bouncy to the touch like a gummy candy sculpted into jewelry. The band was smooth pale wood with tiny inscriptions I couldn't read. Weighed almost nothing. Then I read the item description, and my brain stopped working for approximately 5 seconds. Gold quality. 500,000 square kilometers of internal storage space. No spiritual pressure. No energy drain. Permanent. Soulbound. Cannot be dropped, stolen, or unbound. Anyone who tries to forcibly remove it gets cursed by the entire sprite race. 500,000 square kilometers. That's bigger than most countries on Earth. Spain is about 500,000 square kilometers. These mushroom people just casually handed me a pocket dimension the size of Spain because I sat next to them for 20 minutes while collecting tree juice, and they thought I smelled nice. Their actual reasoning, according to Rackle's translation, I have a clean aura that's different from the greed, rage, and lust they sense on most visitors. Apparently, my dominant personality traits are broke and tired, which registers as purity to psychic fungi. My complete lack of ambition beyond, please let me survive another day, is apparently the spiritual equivalent of smelling like fresh laundry. Normal adventurers carry space equipment that holds maybe a few square meters and drains their mental energy just from existing. I'm wearing a ring that could store an entire civilization's worth of stuff without me feeling a thing. The power gap between what I just received and what experienced warriors carry is like comparing a shopping bag to a cargo ship. Rackle stared at my ring with naked jealousy, those golden bear eyes practically screaming, "I've been helping these mushrooms for years, and they never gave me one." Then he looked at his own paws, each one bigger than a mushroom house, and quietly accepted that a ring designed for human fingers would be a thimble on a bear. Sometimes life just isn't fair, even for armored ursine warlords. I asked what the mushroom people wanted in exchange for the maple honey. Rackle translated, "They want sweets. Different sweets. They've eaten nothing but maple sugar for thousands of years, and while they're not tired of it exactly, they're curious about whether other sweet things exist in the world. Any candy, any sweet plant, any dessert they've never encountered. That's their asking price. A civilization of adorable fungi wants me to introduce them to the concept of variety in confectionery. I am now a candy importer for sentient mushrooms." Added to the resume. With the ring on my finger, I tested it immediately, swept my entire backpack into the storage space with a thought. Pickaxe, sap flasks, maple fruits, cloth bags, everything vanished from physical reality and reappeared in a vast empty void inside the ring. Clean. Instant. No headache. No drain. No effort. Like thinking, put that away, and the universe goes, okay. Then I started on the maple honey barrels. One by one, each mushroom shell container disappeared at my touch. 30, 40 barrels absorbed into my ring without the space even noticing. Like dropping pebbles into the ocean. The area under the crooked maple tree emptied out, revealing something I hadn't seen before, a pipeline. A wooden pipe extending from the barrel storage area straight into the side of a mountain, still actively dripping fresh honey. I stared at that pipe, then at the mountain, then back at the pipe. Rackle. The mushroom people didn't hollow out that entire mountain to store honey, did they? The bear was mid-gulp on his third stolen barrel of honey, face buried in golden sweetness up to his eyeballs. He pulled his snout out, licked amber drips off his nose, and answered like I'd asked whether water was wet. Of course they didn't hollow it out themselves. We earth bears dug it for them. And yes, that entire mountain is full of maple honey they've been brewing for thousands of years. We bears literally cannot eat fast enough to keep up with production. That's the whole reason they needed outside help. An entire mountain, hollowed out by armored bears, filled to capacity with thousands of years of artisanal mushroom honey. I'm standing in front of the world's largest dessert stockpile, and I have a ring that can carry it all. Then Rackle casually dropped one more detail while cracking open barrel number 4. Oh, and the older the honey, the higher the quality. The stuff in the back of that mountain has been aging for centuries. Tops out at yellow quality. 2 full tiers above green. Aged honey that's been maturing inside a mountain for longer than most human civilizations have existed. And these mushroom people consider it a storage problem they need help getting rid of. I looked at the mountain. I looked at my ring. I looked at the mushroom people, who were watching me with those shiny black grape eyes, radiating pure contentment that someone was finally going to take their excess inventory off their tiny hands. Somewhere in my businessman brain, a calculator was running numbers so fast it was smoking. Free renewable high-quality brewing ingredient with aging variants that increase in rarity over time, supplied by an adorable workforce that only wants candy in return, stored in a ring that can hold a country's worth of material. connected to a tavern that's the only entertainment venue in an economy full of wealthy, immortal monsters. I came here to collect tree sap and accidentally stumbled into the greatest supply chain deal in the history of commerce. My bar serves the worst beer in the world, and I can't even understand my own suppliers. But somehow, everything keeps working out. The mushroom people were already lining up more barrels. Rackle was on his fifth. The mountain full of honey waited patiently behind them all, sweet and ancient and enormous. I cracked my knuckles, pointed my ring at the next barrel, and got to work. We had a mountain to empty and a tavern to build, and for the first time since clicking that stupid scam link, I felt like the luckiest bankrupt bartender in any universe. I asked Rackle if I should leave some honey for the bears. He pulled his entire face out of a barrel, nose dripping golden goo, and told me their Bear Clan warehouse already has enough maple honey to feed the entire tribe for 10 years, even if they did absolutely nothing but eat 24 hours a day. 10 years of backup honey. These bears are the doomsday preppers of the dessert world. His only request? Same as the mushrooms. Bring back something different to eat. Everyone on floor 18 is suffering from maple flavor fatigue. Thousands of years of the same sweetness, day after day, century after century. Imagine eating nothing but maple syrup for longer than most civilizations have existed. Even paradise gets boring when your menu has one item. I swept up the remaining barrels from under the crooked tree, dozens of ancient containers with deep brown shells covered in maple leaf dust, some clearly sitting there for centuries. Each one vanished into my ring with a thought. The spot where 50-something barrels had stood was now just a bunch of circular dents in the soft earth, like crop circles made by mushroom containers. Then Rackle taught me a trick that changed everything. Instead of manually collecting honey barrel by barrel, he told me to use my spirit power to open a permanent portal from the ring into the real world, position it under the pipeline, and let the honey flow directly into storage. No hands needed. No heavy lifting. Just set it and forget it while an entire mountain drains into my pocket dimension. I closed my eyes, concentrated, and mentally constructed a doorway. Nothing fancy, just a simple rectangular frame glowing with the same pale gold as the ring. Pushed it under the pipe opening with my mind, connected it to the ring's internal space, and felt the two systems lock together like puzzle pieces clicking into place. The portal opened. About the size of a car hood, edges shimmering gold, interior showing the deep blue void of the ring's storage dimension. Rackle was genuinely impressed. Apparently, he expected me to produce something fist-sized given my beginner mage status. My overinvested spirit points were finally paying dividends in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'm still the weakest fighter in the dungeon, but my mental construction skills are apparently above average. The wizard bartender build has unexpected strengths. Before the honey started flowing, I had to build a container inside the ring's space. Concentrated again, and 6 transparent walls materialized in the void, glass-like but flexible, sealed at every edge, forming a massive rectangular tank. The ring's built-in construction tools responded to my imagination like magical CAD software. The mushroom sprites baked some seriously advanced engineering into this piece of jewelry. The lead mushroom person patted the wooden valve with one tiny hand, patted its own chest with the other, and looked at me with those questioning grape eyes. Universal body language for, ready when you are, I nodded. It grabbed the valve handle with both hands, hung its entire body weight on it, and the gate opened. Golden honey poured out in a stream as thick as my forearm, arcing through the air and dropping cleanly through the portal. No splash, no mess, just a steady golden rope of sweetness disappearing into another dimension. Inside the ring, the transparent tank started filling, liquid sunshine pooling at the bottom, surface rising millimeter by millimeter, tiny ripples spreading across the golden surface. The smell was aggressive. Not the delicate maple tree sap fragrance from earlier. This was concentrated, weaponized sweetness that invaded your nostrils like an occupying army. Imagine crushing 1,000 autumn flowers into a pot of slowly simmering maple syrup. Every breath tasted sweet. Some nearby mushroom people got so overwhelmed by the aroma, they started wobbling around like drunk toddlers, bumping their caps into each other with soft little bonk sounds. Then the color started changing. Started pure gold. That's the green quality fresh honey. After 20 minutes, red threads appeared in the stream, swirling through the gold like silk ribbons in liquid amber. Rackle explained, "Gold means green quality, gold red means blue quality, blood red means yellow quality. The older the honey, the deeper the color, the higher the tier. And here's the beautiful part. These different grades naturally separate by density. Light green quality honey floats on top. Medium blue quality sits in the middle. Heavy yellow quality sinks to the bottom. Like oil and water, they'll never mix no matter how much you shake them. Physics doing my sorting work for free. I'd been worried about contamination, but nature already solved that problem thousands of years before I showed up. While the honey flowed, I witnessed the single most disrespectful act of interspecies friendship I've seen in any world. Rackle, 3-meter armored bear, floor boss, clan leader, casually reached down and scooped up a random mushroom person mid-stride. The poor thing didn't even have time to register what happened before Rackle used it as a napkin. Rubbed it all over his honey-stained snout, left to right to left, thorough coverage, not a single sticky spot missed. Then gently placed the now honey-glazed mushroom back on the ground. The victim looked down at its glistening, syrup-coated body, looked up at Rackle's perfectly innocent bare face, and its eyes filled with tears. Then it attacked, ran at Rackle's paw, and started punching the stone armor with its little round hands. Pap, 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 doing exactly 0 damage. The other mushrooms rallied immediately, swarming Rackle's body like tiny angry berries, stabbing him with pointless spears and blowing empty bamboo tubes at his belly. Not a single weapon could scratch his armor. Rackle flopped onto his back and let them jump on his stomach like a trampoline. Eyes closed, tail wagging, making satisfied groaning sounds while being attacked by creatures whose strongest offensive capability was mild inconvenience. This was clearly a daily ritual. He'd refined the napkin technique to an art form: grab, wipe, release, enjoy massage. The mushroom people had been victimized by this bear so many times they developed a standardized retaliation protocol. "Now I understand why they only consider you a translator," I told him. He didn't even open his eyes, just grunted contentedly while a mushroom person bounced on his ribcage. I asked Rackle why the mushroom people don't use the space rings themselves. Turns out they can't. The rings require spirit power to operate, and sprites born in the dungeon don't develop spirit-type abilities. They can manufacture these country-sized pocket dimensions, but have 0 ability to activate them. They're like a factory that produces Ferrari engines, but doesn't know what a car is. Why not give rings to the bears then? 2 reasons. First, when dungeon monsters get killed by adventurers, all equipped items drop as loot. It's a hard-coded rule of this world system. Even a single copper coin stuck to a dead monster's body gets ejected for adventurers to pick up. A space ring worth more than most kingdoms would be gifted to the first adventurer team that managed to kill a bear. Second, and more personally devastating for Rackle, the mushroom people simply like him less than they like me. His sprite affinity makes them not fear him, but not scared, and trusted friend are apparently very different categories in mushroom society. I showed up, smelled clean, and got a legendary artifact. He's been their neighbor for millennia and gets treated as a convenient napkin holder. I also learned something critical about my ring's soul binding. For me, it's permanent and absolute. Nothing can remove it, steal it, or break the bond. But for dungeon monsters, death sends their souls to the reincarnation pool for cleansing, which wipes all bindings including equipment bonds. So even a soulbound ring would reset every time they die. The sprite curse for forced removal, also neutralized by the pool's purification. The entire security system that protects my ring is meaningless for anyone who respawns regularly. Only someone like me, protected by the dungeon core, unable to be killed inside the dungeon, never going through the reincarnation pool, can truly own one of these rings forever. Being the dungeon's pet human has unexpected perks. Rackle offered to babysit the portal while I went to collect my next ingredient. The ring stays on this floor maintaining the connection. Honey keeps flowing into storage. Bear keeps watch. He sprawled out next to the golden stream with a pile of drowsy mushroom people nestled against his stone armor, their little caps rising and falling with sleep breathing, occasionally murmuring, "mushroom," in their dreams. I pulled my gear out of the ring: backpack, pickaxe, rusty sword. Thanked Rackle, waved goodbye to the mushroom people, 10 little round hands waving back at me in unison from various positions on the bear's body, and teleported to floor 49 for the last dungeon ingredient, crystal ice flower petals. Behind me, a mountain full of ancient honey continued emptying into a ring guarded by an armored bear using sentient fungi as pillows. Just another normal afternoon in my increasingly abnormal life. Floor 49 greeted me by trying to sandblast my face off with a blizzard. The second the teleport light faded, I was standing in a white-out hurricane of snow and wind, visibility about 10 meters, everything beyond that just a screaming wall of frozen white noise. Very welcoming. 5 stars for atmosphere, 0 for hospitality. Good news though, the dungeon core's protection keeps my body at a cozy 26 degrees regardless of external conditions. The Arctic apocalypse happening around me felt roughly like sitting in an air-conditioned room with a thin blanket. Snowflakes hit my face and melted politely. Wind pushed against me with all the threat of a gentle breeze. I'm standing in the kind of cold that would kill a normal human in 20 minutes, and I'm basically on vacation. Bad news, I couldn't see a single thing. Couldn't tell where I was, couldn't find any landmarks, couldn't spot any plants, couldn't locate any monsters. Just me, my rusty sword jammed into the snow as a walking stick, and an infinite white void in every direction. I trudged around for over an hour like a lost penguin, found absolutely nothing useful except a few scraggly pine trees and some mysterious animal tracks that led to a frozen creek and then just stopped, like whatever made them sprouted wings and flew away mid-step. Thanks for nothing, mysterious snow creature. Just as I was about to give up and teleport back to floor 18, where Rackle was babysitting my honey pipeline, I noticed the blizzard weakening. Visibility crept from 10 meters to 30, then 50, then 100. I decided to wait it out, planted my sword in the snow, dropped my backpack, leaned against a pine tree, and crossed my arms like a guy waiting for a bus in the world's worst weather. 30 minutes later, the storm died completely. Last snowflake drifted down and landed on my shoulder like a gentle farewell from winter itself. The silence that followed was so absolute I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the snow. No wind, no rustling, nothing. Just an endless white plain stretching to every horizon under a ceiling of dark purple-gray clouds so low they looked close enough to touch. Occasional flickers of lightning pulsed deep inside the cloud layer, giving the whole scene a vaguely ominous sci-fi feeling. That's when I noticed straight ahead, something was sticking up out of the snowscape that was way too tall and way too straight to be natural. My first thought was, that's a really big mountain. My second thought, after squinting at it for 30 seconds, was, mountains don't have right angles. It was a building. An absolutely enormous, abandoned, gray-white stone structure rising at least 100 meters into the sky, its upper floors disappearing directly into the cloud layer overhead. The stone matched the snow so perfectly that during the blizzard it would have been completely invisible, just another white shape in a white world. No wonder I spent an hour wandering in circles without seeing it. Problem: it was roughly 10 kilometers away. On Earth, that's a short drive. On foot, in deep snow, with no snowshoes and no vehicle, over an hour of miserable trudging. My stamina stats have improved, but I'm still a bartender, not a polar explorer. So I did what any reasonable person would do in a magical dungeon full of helpful monsters. I cupped my hands around my mouth, tilted my head toward the sky, and screamed at the top of my lungs. Hey, anyone out there? I'm the tavern owner from floor 1. I need a ride. The echo bounced across the frozen plain for a solid 10 seconds before fading. Then silence. Then, wing beats. Not bird wings. Something much bigger, much heavier. Each downstroke compressing the air hard enough to create visible vortexes of snow and frost. Like someone was rhythmically slamming 2 aircraft carrier-sized sails against the atmosphere. I looked up and saw a dragon. A double-headed ice dragon with a wingspan of several dozen meters, scales gleaming pale blue-white, each wing beat blowing a ring of frozen mist into the clouds. And standing on its left neck, casually balanced on a dragon's throat like it was a subway platform, was a 4-meter-tall, 2-headed cyclops wearing an ice-blue wizard robe stretched so tight over his muscles it looked like athletic wear. Each of his 2 heads had one eye. Left head was staring directly at me with intense focus. Right head had its eye half closed, apparently concentrating on some kind of spell. He held a snow-white staff roughly the same size as the one Saul gave me, confirming my theory that every wizard in this world designs their staff to double as a blunt weapon. The mage-fighter hybrid build is apparently standard doctrine here. The ice dragon landed 30 meters away, and even its deceleration was dramatic. Wings spread wide as wind breaks, creating twin walls of displaced air that stripped an entire layer of snow off the surrounding terrain. Clawed feet punched into the frozen ground, leaving craters. This thing weighed as much as a building and moved with the precision of a helicopter. The two-headed Cyclops didn't climb down. Instead, a platform of solid ice materialized under his feet, and he floated over to me like a very large, very muscular magic carpet. Stopped 3 meters away, hovering at eye level despite being twice my height. My encyclopedia fired up with 2 entries. The dragon, was an ancestral two-headed frost dragon who'd originally tried to raid the dungeon for food and rob the dungeon core on his way to visit relatives in the elf forest. The core was in a good mood that day. Dungeon just finished construction, feeling generous about finally being able to slack off, and instead of killing offered him a job. The dragon accepted, got upgraded from a common two-headed frost whelp to a fully ancestral ice dragon, and has been working here ever since. The encyclopedia's tip helpfully noted that if I failed my trial period, might be a good creature to befriend, since as one of the few beings who ever tried to mug the dungeon core, he apparently gets special treatment. Comforting to know my backup plan involves networking with a dragon that once attempted armed robbery. The Cyclops, Lagrum, was a legendary rank ice mage who voluntarily signed a 10,000-year work contract with the dungeon just to get a quiet place to practice magic. His life goal? Become a demigod wizard like his idol, Saul. He'd studied under Saul as an auditing student, showed up at the tower a few times to ask about forbidden ice spells, never formally enrolled but got real guidance. His right head snorted at the auditing student label, clearly feeling it deserved more credit than that. The encyclopedia also dropped a fascinating detail. Lagrum doesn't use the reincarnation pool when he dies. Instead, time itself rewinds to resurrect him. He's one of the few dungeon monsters with that privilege. And he's stationed on floor 49 not because he's weak enough for a mid-level floor, but because he's too strong. He's basically the bouncer for everything below floor 50. I introduced myself, skipped the small talk, and asked about crystallized flowers. Lagrum pointed at the giant building in the distance and said that's where they grow. Then he offered me a ride on the dragon because, and I'm quoting his left head here, someone of your status shouldn't waste time on meaningless physical exertion, like walking through snow. I've been called many things since arriving in this dungeon. Trash-tier mortal, ordinary person with absurd luck, suspiciously weak human. But someone of your status was new. Apparently being the dungeon core's protected bartender comes with social prestige I hadn't fully appreciated. Climbed onto the dragon's back. The scales were cold and smooth but didn't freeze my hands. Another perk of dungeon protection. Found a natural groove between the spinal ridges that fit my body like a custom seat. Actually comfortable. Dragon ergonomics are surprisingly human-friendly. Or maybe ice dragons are just shaped conveniently. Lagrum tapped the dragon's neck. Both dragon heads roared simultaneously. Wings exploded open, and my stomach dropped through my feet as the ground fell away at terrifying speed. The entire snow plain shrunk beneath us in seconds. I grabbed onto a spine ridge and held on while the wind, magically softened by Lagrum's spell that pinned me in place, whipped past without actually threatening to dislodge me. During the flight, I told Lagrum about the maple fruit wine, sweet, naturally cold, smooth finish. Both his heads perked up. He hadn't tasted alcohol in centuries, not since his last visit to Saul's tower. He immediately announced he'd visit my tavern tomorrow night for the launch. A legendary rank ice mage who hasn't left floor 49 in hundreds of years, coming to my bar for a glass of fruit wine. My customer list is getting increasingly terrifying, and I love it. The flight took maybe 3 minutes. What would have been an hour-plus slog through deep snow was reduced to a pleasant aerial tour with full commentary from a two-headed wizard riding a two-headed dragon. As we approached the massive building, it grew from impressively large to incomprehensibly enormous. The closer we got, the more I realized my 100-meter estimate was wildly conservative. This thing was a genuine skyscraper-scale structure, ancient and abandoned, its upper reaches lost in the cloud ceiling. Lagrum called it ice plane megastructure. The crystallized flowers I needed were growing somewhere on this building. A legendary wizard, a dragon, and a bartender with a rusty sword, arriving at a mysterious ruin in a frozen wasteland to pick magic flowers for fruit wine. My life has become a fantasy novel written by someone who can't decide between comedy and epic adventure, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I flew through the frozen sky on the back of a giant ice dragon, and let me tell you, this was not your average, nice mountain view trip. I looked up at the huge building in front of me and asked, Regum, did the World Corps build this thing? I honestly thought that was a pretty smart question. Regum thought it was the funniest joke ever invented. Both of his heads laughed at me. One head looked disappointed in my intelligence. The other head rolled its eyes so hard I thought it might fall out. Absolutely not, he said. This was built by the Ice People. The what? Apparently, long ago there was a race called the Ice People. Unlike everyone else in this world, they couldn't use magic. No magic. No battle energy. No flashy explosions. Nothing. Instead, they invented something called technology. I nearly fell off the dragon. Technology? Excuse me? I've been living in a fantasy world with dragons, mages, monsters, floating castles, and enough magic to make physics cry. And now someone tells me there were engineers. You're telling me somewhere in this world there used to be fantasy programmers? Fantasy electricians? Fantasy construction workers? Someone probably had to fix fantasy Wi-Fi. My entire understanding of reality started wobbling. Regum explained that the Ice People refused to accept that they were weak just because they couldn't use magic. Their answer? Fine, we'll build our own power. Honestly? Respect. From where I sat on the dragon, I finally realized just how unbelievably gigantic this building was. Calling it big would be like calling the ocean a little wet. The base disappeared deep into the frozen ground. The top? Completely hidden inside thick clouds. Not hard to see, not very high. It literally stabbed the sky. Even Saul's famous mage tower looked tiny next to it. His tower suddenly felt like a child's toy standing beside an office skyscraper. The outside was strange. There were frozen vines, icicles, beautiful green flowers somehow growing through the ice. But beneath all that, silver metal lines covered the walls. Perfectly straight, perfectly smooth. No magic runes, no ancient carvings, no decorations, just clean futuristic designs. Every so often tiny lights blinked along those lines like the building was quietly breathing. It looked less like an ancient ruin, and more like someone parked a science fiction spaceship inside a fantasy world. I wanted to touch it so badly. It felt like history was standing right in front of me. Instead of answering all my questions immediately, Regum asked the dragon, to land. The dragon slowly circled downward. Despite being the size of a flying mountain, the landing was surprisingly smooth. Snow exploded everywhere when those giant claws touched the ground. Regum led me toward the only open room in the massive building. The metal door had frozen open long ago. Inside, the room was incredibly simple. One table, 2 chairs. That's it. Even stranger, the furniture wasn't placed there. It was grown directly out of the walls and floor like the entire room had been made from one single piece. Then something happened that nearly made me jump. A diamond-shaped object on the ceiling suddenly lit up all by itself. No spell, no torch, no crystal. It simply sensed someone entering the room and politely turned itself on. Automatic lights. Ancient automatic lights. Still working. After all these years. Meanwhile, half the villages I've visited can't even keep a fireplace burning. Technology really doesn't mess around. After we sat down, Regum finally told me the story. The Ice People didn't believe in gods. To them, gods weren't sacred. They were simply powerful beings that appeared earlier than everyone else. And if something exists, it can be studied. If it can be studied, it can be understood. If it can be understood, it can eventually be replaced. I blinked. They didn't just disrespect the gods. They basically looked at heaven and said, I bet we can reverse engineer that. That is either the bravest thing I've ever heard, or the fastest way to become a cautionary tale. Turns out it was both. The giant tower had a name. The Divine Experiment Tower. Its purpose? Not to worship gods. Not to communicate with gods. Not to summon gods. No, their official research goal was capture a true god, dissect the god, study the god, replace the god. I stared at Regum for several seconds. I had absolutely no words. Imagine ants building a laboratory because they planned to kidnap the sun. That's basically what happened. Unfortunately for them, the true gods weren't ordinary powerful beings. They were literally part of reality itself. You can't replace reality. The Ice People's plan was doomed from the very beginning. Then one day, they disappeared. Not defeated, not conquered, not driven away. Just gone. An entire civilization vanished overnight. Only this impossible tower remained behind. As Regum finished speaking, he casually pointed his staff outside. Instantly, a terrifying snowstorm exploded across the mountains. The peaceful weather became absolute chaos. Wind screamed. Snow blasted against the walls. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. I looked outside. Then I looked at Regum. Then outside again. Then back at him. I had spent several minutes feeling grateful because he warned me that a snowstorm was coming. Now I realized something. The storm wasn't coming. He made the storm. Apparently, weather forecasts are very accurate when you're personally creating the weather. Good to know. Instead of questioning the old wizard's completely unfair control over nature, I decided to ask more important questions. So, what's the difference between true gods and people who become gods? Regum happily explained. True gods cannot be replaced. Ever. Because they represent the foundations of reality itself. Time, space, life, death. Without them, the world simply wouldn't function. They're basically the operating system of existence. Then there are the gods who earn their power. Those represent ideas instead of universal laws. Forging, war, honor, moon magic. Those positions can change. If someone stronger walks the same path and surpasses the current god, congratulations. You just got promoted. The old god gets fired. Imagine training for 10,000 years only to receive a divine notification saying, "You have been replaced." Harsh. I asked how many gods existed. Regum counted them. 2 true gods. Time and space. Life and death. Then 4 ascended gods. The dwarf god of forging. The beastman god of war. The human god of honor. The elf god of moon magic. That's it. Honestly, for a world this huge, the top floor wasn't very crowded. Then I asked the obvious question. So, which god or race the Ice People? Regum admitted nobody actually knew. The most common guess was the god of time and space, considering the Ice People literally built a laboratory to capture a true god. Yeah, that theory sounded pretty reasonable. Some mistakes get you detention. Some mistakes erase your entire civilization from history. Scale matters. Regum suddenly became serious. There are things I can't tell you. Even Saul can't. Only actual gods can explain the rest. Fair enough. When someone with 2 heads says, "Stop asking questions," it's probably wise to stop asking questions. Besides, I had already learned enough information today to give historians several heart attacks. I quietly organized everything in my mind. 2 true gods. 4 ascended gods. Technology once rivaled magic. A civilization challenged heaven. And heaven apparently responded with the fantasy version of deleting a save file. While I was still thinking, returned. The poor dragon looked like he'd flown straight through every snowstorm ever invented. Both heads were covered in ice. One head breathed freezing mist. The other carefully carried over a dozen crystallized flowers between its teeth, like someone delivering the world's most fragile bouquet. Each flower looked absolutely beautiful. Thin blue petals, tiny crystal centers. They sparkled under the room's white light like little frozen diamonds. Gently placed them on a stone platform and nudged them toward me with the tip of his tail. Good dragon. Best delivery service in the frozen north. Regum smiled. My part of the deal is done. Tomorrow I'll personally come taste your maple fruit wine. No disappointing me. No pressure. Just an ancient legendary wizard with 2 heads judging my homemade alcohol. Totally relaxing. I carefully packed every crystal ice flower into my basket. I promise, I told him. You won't be disappointed. Then I thanked Regum. I thanked him too. I even promised to bring the dragon something delicious next time we met. Always be nice to dragons. Especially dragons big enough to accidentally step on your entire future. After saying goodbye, I activated the teleportation stairs and returned to the 18th floor. I came looking for flowers. Instead, I discovered that this fantasy world once had technology powerful enough to challenge the gods. Some civilizations build monuments. Some build libraries. The ice people built a laboratory to kidnap divinity itself. That plan ended exactly as well as you would expect. Still, I couldn't stop staring back at that impossible tower. Somewhere inside those frozen walls were the dreams of a civilization that looked at the gods and confidently said, "Yeah, we can probably figure those guys out. History may call them fools." I couldn't help calling them absolutely insane. And just a tiny little bit awesome. I finally returned to the 18th floor after my crazy trip to the giant science tower. This time the teleportation stairs actually behaved themselves. Instead of throwing me into some random corner like they usually do. Seriously, whoever designed these stairs must enjoy practical jokes. They dropped me right beside Rackle. The giant earth bear was sleeping under the crooked maple tree. Not normal sleeping. Professional sleeping. Olympic gold medal sleeping. The 3-meter-tall bear was lying on his back with his belly pointing toward the sky, snoring peacefully. Even better, about 15 tiny mushroom people were sleeping on top of his stomach. Every time Rackle breathed in, the little mushrooms slowly floated upward. Every time he breathed out, they floated back down. It looked less like sleeping and more like the world's fluffiest amusement park ride. Some of the little guys were even talking in their sleep. Mushroom, mushroom. That was apparently enough conversation for them. Rackle opened one sleepy eye. "Oh, you're back already. I accidentally met the boss of the 49th floor." Rackle blinked. "I needed some materials. He helped me collect them." Rackle blinked again. "You're ridiculously lucky." "Honestly? Yeah. Most people meet dungeon bosses and nearly die. I meet dungeon bosses. And leave with new friends." I walked over to check on the maple honey pipeline. Earlier it had been flowing with beautiful golden red honey. Now, it had become deep blood red. The smell was unbelievable. Imagine every candy shop, bakery, pancake restaurant, maple syrup factory, and dessert buffet joining forces. Then multiply that sweetness by 1,000. The air itself felt sugary. Breathing too deeply probably counted as eating dessert. "So how's the honey collection going?" I asked. Rackle didn't even bother opening both eyes. He lazily scratched one of the sleeping mushroom people's caps with a giant claw. The tiny mushroom hugged the claw in its sleep like it was a giant teddy bear. "Adorable." "We're nowhere close," Rackle mumbled. "The oldest honey has been sitting under this mountain for thousands of years. What you're seeing now is only the newest layer. The really old stuff is much deeper. In other words, we're going to be waiting for days. Days." "Wonderful." I thanked him for watching the portal and started walking back toward the tavern. Then, halfway through my first step, my brain finally decided to wake up. I stopped, turned around, smacked myself on the forehead. "I'm an idiot." Rackle slowly looked at me. "What?" I pointed at the mountain. "Why are we waiting for the honey to slowly come out through a tiny pipe? There has to be a giant storage room inside the mountain. Can't I just go inside? And put all the honey directly into my space ring?" Silence. Rackle froze. Then his eyes suddenly became huge. You're right." Both of us stood there in complete disbelief. How had neither of us thought about this? We had spent all day patiently waiting beside a tiny pipe, while the entire mountain was probably full of honey. Amazing. Two geniuses. Combined IQ. Room temperature. Rackle jumped upright so suddenly that every sleeping mushroom person on his belly launched into the air. Tiny mushrooms rolled everywhere. One landed upside down. Another bounced into a pile of leaves. They all woke up. Mushroom, mushroom, mushroom. They looked around in complete confusion. Then, without asking a single question, they all curled back together. And immediately fell asleep again. Honestly, life goals. I closed the honey valve. The red stream stopped flowing. I put my space ring back on. The magical portal disappeared. Then I suddenly realized something else. Wait, I have a space ring now. Why am I still carrying this heavy basket? I stared at my backpack, then at my pickaxe, then my rusty sword, then back at the ring. Oh, one by one, everything disappeared into the ring. Backpack, gone. Pickaxe, gone. Sword, gone. Back pain, gone. I felt 10 kilograms lighter. Technology? No. Magic inventory. 10 out of 10. Would absolutely recommend. Then Rackle led me up the mountain. At first, walking wasn't too bad. Then it became steeper. Then steeper. Then even steeper. Soon I was basically climbing a giant wall made of rocks. Meanwhile, Rackle casually walked ahead like he was taking a relaxing afternoon stroll. Are we there yet? I asked. This isn't even close. He didn't even turn around. You don't store thousands of years of honey inside a tiny hill. Fair point. After watching me struggle for another few minutes, Rackle sighed. You know what? Just climb on. I looked at the giant bear. You sure? Get on. Well, who was I to refuse free transportation? I climbed onto his back. He crouched slightly. Hold on. The next second, whoosh, the giant bear exploded forward like someone had fired him out of a cannon. Wind blasted into my face. Trees flew past. The entire maple forest became smaller and smaller below us. I wasn't riding a bear anymore. I was riding a furry rocket. 20 minutes later, we finally reached the summit. The view was incredible. Golden trees stretched across the entire world. The giant lake looked tiny from up here. Everything looked peaceful. Until I remembered something. How do the mushroom people carry giant barrels of honey all the way up here? Have you seen those little guys? Their legs are shorter than my boots. Carrying huge barrels uphill would probably take them until next century. Rackle laughed. They don't. They make the honey. They store it. Then they ask us earth bears to carry everything up the mountain, and they pay us with fresh honey. Delivery bears. Of course. Apparently giant bears work for honey. Honestly. Same. Rackle guided me toward a cave hidden among the rocks. This is the entrance. The cave was just large enough for him to squeeze through. We walked inside. The walls were covered with thick layers of old honey. Thousands of years of spilled syrup had coated the stone until it shined like polished amber. Everything smelled sweet. Very sweet. Dangerously sweet. After only a few breaths, I felt like diabetes was waiting around the next corner. The air wasn't air anymore. It was maple-flavored soup. After a short walk, the tunnel suddenly ended. I stepped forward, then froze. Holy, below me was an ocean, not water. Honey. An entire sea of maple honey stretched beneath the cave.